What's up, party people, and welcome to Countdown to Classic. This is a podcast that educates, informs, and gossips about the highly anticipated World of Warcraft Classic. Each week we discuss the news, hot button issues, and content of the upcoming Classic servers. I'm your host, Josh Corbett, and this is a show where it's not my opinion on World of Warcraft that counts, but yours. If you're new to the show, Countdown to Classic goes through your expert input on everything relating to the upcoming release of World of Warcraft Classic. Today, it's time to talk beta, baby. I was fortunate enough to get in and play around, and my heart goes out to all of you still waiting for an invite. I truly hope Blizzard continues to open up the beta a little bit more, but if you haven't been able to play, then Countdown to Classic has you covered for beta impressions, as I take two calls, one from 2 days in and the other from 6 days in, as we continue to peel back the layers on what Blizzard has given us. Following that, I took a great call from a listener who works in the IT industry, all about layering from a technical viewpoint. So that may explain it a bit further to all of you now that we've had a bit more time to digest the news about the plans that Blizzard has server-side for World of Warcraft Classic. And finally, the pièce de résistance, the featured call of the show, which I really recommend you hang around for. We'll hear from the one, the only Kevin Jordan, the Vanilla WoW class designer who's been on this show so many times now, and now he comes on for the conclusion to this Ask Kevin series that's been going on for almost 3 months now, as he speaks to many members of the community in a very candid interview about World of Warcraft, MMORPGs, and Blizzard. And if you've enjoyed Kevin's class calls, then this will be one you won't want to miss. Now, you all know the drill by now. This is a community-based podcast, so if you like what you're hearing, join the Discord now and keep the conversations going with us all over there. We're a friendly bunch. Follow me on Twitter at Count2Classic with the number 2, or email me at feedback@countdowntoclassic.com if you'd like to call into the show, make a suggestion, or just say hi. Everything you'll need is in the show notes for each episode, along with the show's Patreon link if you'd really like to help keep the show going over there. Or if subscriptions aren't your thing, then you can help keep the lights on at Countdown to Classic by checking out the show's tip jar over at Ko-Fi. There's also the show's merch store with some great designs over there for t-shirts, hoodies, coffee mugs, and things like that, so be sure to check that out too. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's get into it with Calling Countdown. All right, it's time for another Countdown to Classic call, and we are addressing a very important topical topic right now, and that is WoW Classic beta impressions. Now, we've got a couple of people on the line who have been fortunate enough to be invited to the beta. They have played it over the last couple of days and have enjoyed it, and they'll give their impressions soon. And I've obviously been very fortunate as well in order to crack an invite. I don't know how I got in there, but I got in, so it's great to have a look-see and sort of poke my head around and see what's going on, try and find some bugs. Now, there's still waves of invites going out, so I just want to reiterate to people, don't lose hope if you haven't got in yet. I'm seeing sort of every few hours, more and more people seem to be popping up going, oh yes, I finally got in, this is great. So don't lose hope. Hopefully you guys will all get in eventually. It's pretty quiet at the moment, so I'm sure Blizzard will open the floodgates more. But let's introduce the people on this call. As always, I am so happy to have the following person here. Defcamp, what's up, brother?
Hell yeah, brother. What's going on? I am, first of all, so blessed to be in the beta, but even more blessed to be here with you, Josh. I'm having a great time, and thank you so much for inviting me, my man.
Mate, you are too kind, and believe me, the pleasure is all mine. I'm really interested to hear what you will have to say because you've played a lot more of the beta than I have. But the other person we've got on the line, and I just realized off the call that you had actually been on the show before, and Defcamp's been through this as well. Unfortunately, your call was scrapped because the call was rendered obsolete by some news that we got a couple of days after we recorded the call. So it's the second time we've spoken, but your first time officially appearing on the show. Polydox, how are you?
I'm doing well. Besides my allergies, I'm allergic to everything that's green and grows outside, and that's all it's doing outside is growing.
Well, hopefully the WoW Classic beta is helping with the allergies a little bit and making you feel somewhat better. But guys, let's get straight into it. I just want to discuss basically things that we have picked up, things that we have noticed, how we feel in general about the beta. Defcamp, I'll start with you, but let me open up with a little bit of an impression of mine so far. So I've only played around about 3 to 4 hours of the beta so far. I know that's going to be criminal to a lot of people because it's, like, oh man, Josh, you need to spend more time in there. Like you've got to get to it, man. Come on, there's bugs to find. Unfortunately, real life does get in the way as well. I've got work and everything, but I'm absolutely playing when I can. But already the limited time that I've been in the game, yes, I've absolutely found bugs. There does seem to be a bit of work left to do with WoW Classic, but that's okay. That's what betas are for. Hopefully we can sort everything out. It's, an expected process. Defcamp. Let's just start on the bug thing, perhaps. Let's start with how much time have you spent already in the beta just over the last 2 days or so, and what have you seen?
So I've got almost a full day played in the beta now, even though I've been working as well. I work part-time, so I'm a little bit luckier when it comes to like how much time I can put into it. But I've actually noticed quite a few bugs, and I think I've reported somewhere around, not to brag or anything like that, but guys are saying I was like one of the only streamers that was like reporting all these crazy. Well, but I think I recorded like 20 bugs or so. And we're doing a lot of different testing, like we're doing some testing with Ayle and stuff like that. But a lot of just simple bugs that I noticed. Things like invisible mobs attacking, little things like that. A lot of visual mobs, a lot of visual bugs and stuff like that. And for the most part, though, there are some little gameplay bugs that I noticed here and there. But like I said, it's a beta; it's to be expected. But I just want to say that overall, things feel pretty good. They feel pretty smooth. Still not sure on some values and things like that, and we're still testing some other things that we want to do. But it's been really exciting to be here. But there are some bugs, and that's to be expected. But it's really not that bad, honestly, in my opinion.
We need to turn it into it's turning into a little bit of a pseudo dick measuring contest where it's like, well, I've reported 20 bugs, and then Polydox will be like, well, I've reported 30 bugs, and I'm hiding in the corner, like hiding my shame, going, I've only reported 3 bugs.
I'm honestly I've only reported like 3, and they're mostly, like Defcamp was saying, little visual things, which, like if you try to do a melee swing while you're swimming forward underwater, your weapon disappears. You just like backhand the mob.
Well, you know what they say, mate. It's not about the number of bugs you report. It's about what you do with it.
Exactly. and I will say this. We have noticed some big bugs, and we've tested. So there's things that we've tested with Ayle, and Ayle tested himself as well. Things like AoEs taking out Shaman's totems. We're trying to work out and see if we're trying to work and see if rolling hots are pulling aggro, stuff like that. But there's a lot of things, and I wish I was thinking a little bit harder right now, because there was some other things that were pretty important that we did notice. But like I said, for the most part, there are a lot of visual bugs, just minor stuff like that. But there are some things, and it's really hard sometimes, right? Because this whole thing, like, first of all, how the wand feels, the wanding animations are great. That's one thing I want to say. The wanding animations are perfect. That's something I'm really big about, is the wanding animations. But there are some things that it's hard to tell because, we're so used to private servers, so many of us, and it's hard to remember what it was like actually back in the day.
Yeah, and I'll go for it, mate. Go for it.
I was going to say, one of the things I ran into is, the spell batching. When I originally played vanilla, I played a warlock, and so I wasn't, doing anything with interrupts. And I'm playing a shaman now, and from my understanding, you could have two spells that happen at the same time, but I always felt like that there was like a hierarchy, like certain spells could possibly like take precedent over others. So like I go to Earthshock something to interrupt, and I would think it would still interrupt it, but it's not. It's throwing the spell up, and it's doing the damage, but I'm still also getting hit by the opposing spell. I don't know if that is how it's supposed to be.
Well, I do know what you mean. Defcamp, have you experienced anything like that in terms of spell batching or other little sort of ability nuances?
Yeah, the spell batching, I've got to do definitely more. I want to do more duels and stuff like that to try the spell batching a little bit more. But one thing that I'm trying to figure out that it's kind of hard is regen times. And a lot of people were saying that regen felt slow. Honestly, it feels fast to me. But I got to keep in mind that I have 1.12 weapons on wands, and that it does feel like at certain times things are quicker and things are faster. But as far as spell batching, I did notice, and like you said, there are some things that do feel a little off and feel a little time-wise different than what I'm used to. Like I said, like wanding and trying to get the wand to start, and after I do a global, it seems like I have to press it 3-4 times, wait till my spell actually comes off global, even though wand is not on the global. So it's just little weird things like that, but then it doesn't do it all the time. I also noticed at one point I was in doing some quests down in the Barrens, and I was just killing a mob, and it just disappeared, and a whole bunch of mobs around me just came around, almost like a phase. You know,
layering, baby. And, you just met layering.
Yeah. I don't know if they're just, and that's the thing. You don't know if they're testing something. You don't know if that was a bug. Like I said, as far as it goes, though, from what I was expecting way more bugs, and I think it's a lot more fine tuned than I.
Yeah, I've seen there was a clip that went around that did the sort of. Went around the traps of layering a few hours ago, where it really is someone's in the middle of fighting a mob for a quest or whatever, and it just like disappears, like Thanos snapped it away, literally, and then other mobs appear around them.
Was it me?
No.
It was you.
I thought it was someone else. I'm not sure, but it sounded like someone else. But it was weird to see, and I was like, wow, that's layering in full effect, I guess, because we thought we wouldn't see layering in this beta, given there's hardly anyone playing it at this point, but that the examples are now starting to pop up. So it is weird to see. It is noteworthy. It's worth sort of, discussing. But that's the plan that Blizzard has told us is going forward. But I'll talk about Polydox. A couple more things that I've noticed. I'd be interested to see if you've made note of anything like this or come across this in your travels. Now, just the three little bugs that I've come across is, power word fortitude. When you apply that, Defcamp, you would have noticed this one. Your health bar doesn't actually decrease at all when you apply it. You remain at 100% health, and the value just changes. Whereas what we're obviously used to is back in the day, you'd get power word fortitude, and then your green health bar would decrease a little bit, and you'd watch it regen back up to 100%, right?
Right. Right.
So yeah, that's not happening. I reported that one. People are coming across floating nodes. Like I saw a peace bloom floating in the air about, 10 yards above my head. Too, near Brill.
And we, a couple of, like I said, invisible mobs, but, and then one thing I'm not sure if it's a bug or if it's how it's supposed to be working. And actually Viv, just shouts out to Viv, he just pointed this out. In the World encounters I'm doing, and I don't know if it's because of the new UI setting and how you can have the party frames and all this, but you can actually, even if you're not leader, you can mark mobs in a dungeon, even when you're not the leader. So I don't know if that's how it just is now, and if that's because there are some things that are going to be different, some things that are just going to be completely different, and we either have to get used to that or see if that is something that will change. But I just forgot something that I was going to say, but yeah, it was, for the most part, like I said, Josh, a lot of these things are things that I think are definitely, either going to probably change after a little bit, but for the most part, nothing too the layering thing, the starting thing is pretty big, honestly, but nothing too crazy that I've noticed, honestly.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything that made me go like, holy shit. But yeah, go for it, Polydox.
All I was going to say is, so far nothing seems like a game breaking, except for the layering thing that has been observed.
Yeah, that was startling.
Nothing should like hurt your experience of playing it too badly. The only other funny clip I saw was it was like a Tauren warrior who was dueling somebody, and he was charging out of water, and he actually like shot up into the air, like vertically, like really high for some reason. He never connected with the player or anything. He hit this a certain vertex on this like little hill and shot straight into.
Yeah, man, just like it was back in vanilla. But I've noticed little things like that. The animation, Defcamp, you've come across again because you're playing a priest like me. Now, tell me if I'm going crazy, but all my listeners jumped on me when I first started streaming the beta, and Def now Smite looks obviously different.
Yeah.
So it had that, that rip or that tear effect. It wasn't really, Smite was never really a glaringly obvious spell. Like, it wasn't like, whoa, like, holy flash of light in your face.
No, it's way too flashy. So it's supposed to be a little, basically, it's supposed to be like just like a mark across the it's like a little gash. It looks like across the marb. It's like almost like a Nike swoosh going across. That's what it's supposed to look like. And instead, it's basically like this huge, bright flash. I've also noticed the same thing with Res. Res is very bright and flashy. And I think these are just things that have probably been forgot to be taken out, but they're definitely things that need to be brought to attention. And like I said, a lot of it is very visual. A lot of it's very visual. But some of the gameplay stuff that we've noticed, like trying to figure out how the threat's working on a lot of mobs. The troll regen was actually giving off, which I think is how it's supposed to work, giving off more threat than my actual renew was. And we're trying to figure out little things like that. We're probably going to do a little bit more testing when it comes to that tonight. But one big thing that I did notice, and like Melron said, was there are some things for shamans that he said that weren't working. And I think the being able to AoE totems is huge. I mean, that's definitely something that needs to be changed. And he's also, it looks like a lot of the other shaman buffs that didn't work as pulses are working as pulses, which means like, so strength of earth, which is usually just you put it down, you get the buff. It's actually pulsating. So it might have an effect on things like totem twisting, things like that. It might have some kind of effect on that. So that's a lot more testing we have to do.
Yeah, for sure. And look, it's something where, these little visual things, as you pointed out already, I'm not sure if we've mentioned already as well, the warrior charge with that red flash that's coming across that people are up in arms about, things that have popped up on streams like patches of water missing in the dead mines and whatnot. It is like there's little things, and I'm sure they're relatively easily fixed, but I think the following question is worth asking, and Polydox, I'll throw it over to you first for an answer to this, and then Defcamp piggyback off of Polly's answer. But now, look, I don't want people to think that Josh is making it sound like the sky is falling. I'm not. I'm perfectly happy with the beta at this point. But the question does need to be asked. Are you guys somewhat surprised by some of the things that you've seen in the beta to the point that you go, well, Blizzard has been working on this game for 2 years or so at this point, and wow, that wasn't done yet, or that wasn't done yet, and I can't believe they didn't get this right, and whatnot. Polly, are you really shocked by anything, or you think, hey, look, it's a beta, where they're at is perfectly fine, it will all get ironed out over the next couple of months?
It's little column A, little column B. I did expect a fair number because it is it's not a different engine, but it's a different architecture or whatever that they're transferring everything over to, and that's what a lot of the bugs seem to be. Is it's like carryovers from what is retail. Now, if being able to actually figure all of them out, that's hard to say. I really don't know. As more and more people get in, I'm sure they could probably get most of at least the most noticeable ones, and then occasionally there might be a little one here or there, but I don't know. It's kind of hard to say.
Defcamp?
Yeah, something that I felt was like I felt kind of like, wow, this is amazing. Like, it's an amazing undertaking that they did, and kind of surprised, and actually kind of like, wow, they did a pretty good job. But at the same time, kind of like, oh, I can't believe they messed something like this up, or something small like the random enchantment thing showing up, and which they did a blue post about that. I'm sure they heard a bunch of different people reporting that. A lot of things that were just basically very obvious like the spell animations, like things like AoEs, knocking out totems, things like that. But this is something that I think, when you have a small team that they have, it's kind of a monumental undertaking that they had. And this beta is probably going to give them so much data, so much help. But honestly, I want to give respect and kudos where it's due. I mean, for the team what they have and for what they've done, honestly, I am impressed in a lot of ways. But I do think there's still some work to be done, and I think it's actually now, even though I was thinking, maybe a beta wasn't a good idea and all that, after seeing this now, I'm kind of feeling like maybe the beta was a good idea. I don't know. I mean, this probably could have been done in a smaller closed beta as well, maybe a non-streamable beta or just something that wouldn't have maybe brought the hype down a little bit. I don't know, but either way, I think it needed to be done because it has helped.
I completely agree with you, and I was in the same boat. I was like, they shouldn't do a beta. Just, if you're looking at the bottom line, get everyone in the game. They will subscribe and they'll fix out your issues while they're subscribed. And, I'm sure the game has been done well enough that it's close enough that it'll be fine. But now that I'm seeing all of this stuff popping up over the last couple of days, absolutely, it seems that a beta was necessary. And, to take it a step further, Blizzard, if you are listening, for fuck's sake, open those gates. I've been hammering this on Twitter going, sure, it's a shame to see some big names not get into the beta, and I think people like Mad Season are still on the outer. They're still waiting. People like Cargos are still waiting. Like, there's still people out there.
I know Cargos got in.
Cargos got in. Okay, no worries. But outside, and forgetting the content creators, there are regular, just your average Joe players who need to get into this beta who don't produce content. That's what I mean by when I say the average Joe. Just people who are diehard Classic fans who fucking deserve to get in, who will test the living shit out of this game for you. Open those floodgates, because I'll tell you a couple of things right now. You've got people in there who don't really know what is and what is not a bug. And when I say people, I mean people like me. And yes, there are others out there like me who have not played a boatload of private servers. And obviously, I know private servers is not the thing to test the water against, but also, I have very, very, very vague memories of vanilla. So I'll give you a great example. I was in Undercity last night and I had never ever tried this before. I just walked straight through into the bank. I had no fucking idea you could do that. And so, laughably on stream, I said, whoa, I just walked straight through a wall into the bank. That's a bug. And thankfully my listeners, I didn't report it or anything, but thankfully my listeners are like, Josh, you've always been able to do that. Don't worry about it. And, I'd never played Horde before or anything, or, even the private server play I'd done when I'd gone into Undercity, you just don't think to try to walk through the teller window into the bank. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and so, it was just, there's little things where even though it seems like a bug, it was there in vanilla. So people like me are being tripped up on this stuff, and it can be problematic.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that people like Ayle finally did get in, and we need more people like Ayle, Talager, people who just have so much viv and knowledge of the game. And then there's people in my chat right now, I know Sarmonican wants a shout out probably because he's been just such a avid, viewer and avid player of the game. Just everyday people that have been playing this game for a long time and know their shit. But I was happy to see that it seemed like last night or the night before there were a lot more invites that went out. And I think there was probably a good amount of people. We got a bunch of people here in chat, Fohammer, Dan, a lot of these guys, they've been playing this game for a long time. They know a lot of stuff. They, I think, could definitely use some more eyes on this beta because it feels empty at sometimes. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it feels like a lot of this testing has to be done in groups. A lot of this testing has to be done with more people. And the more, it's just one of those things where, the more people you have, the more eyes it gets. But when you start playing it and you notice just how in-depth this game really is and how much little nuance and how much little shit there is, you really start to understand that, wow, these guys did have a massive undertaking. And, it's okay to maybe give them a break here and there because there's really so much that they had to do. But I just hope that they start inviting more people, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. Polly, I'll turn to you because one little point that Defcamp just raised that I want to extrapolate on a little bit is the empty feeling. Now, I've again been tweeting about this going like, hey, Blizzard, it's cool that, you know, I don't get me wrong. I don't want to sound like I'm not grateful for the invite. Thanks so much. It's been great to get in, but it feels really lonely. Open those gates. Get the OGs in. Get the, you know, more people like Ayle in who will just test the fuck out of this game, but also create a bloody population and create a living world. So, Polly, I'd ask you, have you come across many people?
Well, I honestly, I've played less. I've been busy with other things as well. And I was playing mostly on the first day. So there was plenty of people. And I was actually running into issues where, you know, I'm sitting there having to wait basically in a queue, behind people to get spawns. Because there was enough people around. I could imagine, however, it wasn't like overwhelming. It wasn't like a launch day feeling at all. It was kind of, I suppose, what a healthy amount of people would look like, which might be why they're not trying to open the floodgates. They're trying to keep it kind of healthy levels as opposed to, hey, here's everybody tripping over each other.
It was a ghost town at first. It really was. And then I have started, especially as soon as I got to the Barrens, it got a lot more populated. I mean, not a lot more populated, but I mean, I'll be doing a quest and there'll be no one there. You know what I mean? But from the beginning, cause I've been here from the get-go, from day one. Day one was very, very, very small amount of people, right? And there definitely has been a lot, I'd say probably almost double since then. Maybe a little bit more. So I definitely think they are inviting more people, but yeah, I mean it's one of those things where I think like they wanted to keep it small for a little bit and just not get it too crazy. I don't know really the whole understanding by it, but they definitely are inviting more people, and I'm really waiting for the stress test, man. I cannot wait for this first stress test.
Yeah, that will be interesting. And as Anti's pointing out in Twitch chat, you know, perhaps Blizzard is, you know, not opening those gates because of the technical side of things, and maybe having all these people on the server at this point might break it. You know, maybe that's why they're waiting for the stress test or whatnot. So who knows? We'll wait and see. But look, it's been, have you guys, let's just say this much. We've sort of gone down a little bit of a negative, well, not negative, but an analytical angle there. Let's jack it up a notch and just say, you know, Defcamp, have you been having fun?
Oh my God, dude. I can honestly say I haven't had this much fun in so long. I mean, it's weird because somehow I'm having more fun than I had on private servers. I don't know how, but I am. It's just, maybe it's the whole monumental occasion that it is, the fact that this is actually classic. But I really feel like all that other stuff aside, all that negative, whatever, I mean, it's not really being negative, it's just analytical. I 100% feel like this is going to be a massive success. No matter what happens, the road we're going down right now, all in all, man, things are pretty good. Things are actually really good, honestly. I mean, you know, a lot of people complain about the layering thing. I mean, if that is only there for a couple weeks to a month, I can live with it as long as it's out of there pretty soon. I mean, of course, if I had it my way, I would like to see it without any of that stuff. But, you know, none of us are going to get exactly what we want, right? But, like, at the end of the day, man, it is amazing. The game feels good. It's very smooth. It's beautiful. The classic settings look great. So much of it I love. I'm having fun. I'm playing classic WoW with my friends, and I can't ask for much more than that.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. And Polly, I'll get your impressions as well. It looks great. It feels great. But, Polly, have you drawn those conclusions as well? Are you having fun?
Yeah, you know, most of the bugs they're small. They don't really impact the feel of the game at all. And so, you know, kind of annoying, like the shaman totems being killed by AoE thing. That's okay. Sort of affects gameplay. But for the most part, at least in just the general PvE experience, it's Warcraft. It's what we loved, and it's the same thing. Just, you know, there's little hitches.
And just to finish up this call, I'll just sort of finish on this point, guys, and get any commentary that you might have. Now, we've talked about it already lightly, being like distinguishing the difference between a bug and something we just didn't quite remember. And, I've been very, very careful with, I relate back to my chat a lot and go, guys, you help me. Let's try and figure out what is a bug, what isn't a bug. And, the moments like that Undercity thing where they're like, Josh, it's all good. And I'm like, great. But we're seeing more and more people, obviously we see the public faces on streams pop up and really misremembering a lot of things. People being confused about what you could not do in and out of combat and whatnot. And our memories are being stretched. And a lot of people, we knew this was going to happen, the whole well, that's not how it was on private servers, but you've got to throw out the private server experience because now you've got to stretch back to the 14 and 15-year-old memory. And I think it's testing at times. Have you found that, Defcamp? Have you found yourself sitting down going, fuck, I really need to try and think back 15 years ago if this was a certain way? Dude,
we had a moment today with this Renew thing and talking with Ayle, and everyone has different opinions. Everyone thinks, even in chat, we had 10, 15 different opinions. Finally, Thermophile gave me a call and he's like, no, I know it was like this, that. He had a few points, but even still, we still aren't 100%. And it's really hard, right? And I know Blizzard knows that. I'm sure they do. And wondering how many things, right, are actually just beyond, anyone's knowledge. I mean, is there anything that even Blizzard doesn't have the info for? It's just really hard to know if it's something that you remember from private servers, because a lot of us played private servers for a long time, and a lot of us, all of us haven't played vanilla for 14 friggin' years. So, absolutely, Josh, there are so many moments where I'm scratching my head saying, I have no idea if this is how it was or not.
It's kind of funny to think that in the end, there could be bugs that go through that weren't actually in vanilla, but nobody has any idea, so they're just kind of left the way they are.
Polly, I'll ask you this question. Actually, sorry, just real quick. Defcamp, listeners are asking, I'm not sure if you mentioned it earlier, what is the Renew thing that you've mentioned a couple of times now?
So we're trying to test how Renew, so basically what I was testing is back in the day, we're trying to test that if you have a rolling hot on a tank, right? So I have a Renew on a tank and it's healing him. First of all, if the tank just body pulls or if the tank just runs in there, will the aggro go right to me? And also does it put me into combat? Now, the other thing is, we were doing it and I was putting it on Ayle, who's a troll. And his troll health regen somehow is causing more threat than the Renew. And I wasn't getting aggro, but when I put it on an orc, it was. And then the whole other side of it is also, once I'm in combat, and once we pull, will the Renew pull aggro? Now, it wasn't pulling at first on Ayle, but as soon as I would put a power word shield, it was. It with more people, because I need to get that threat threshold higher on the Renew. So it's something that I really need to test with more people, and I've been trying to test it here in this group, but I've been forgetting, honestly, a few times. And it's something that, as far as I remember, putting HOTS on, especially on private servers, is not a good thing, especially when they're about to pull. It would usually pull aggro. But right now, it doesn't seem like it's doing that.
All right, fair enough. Now, Polydox, I'll come to you for the final question, and Defcamp, please feel free to piggyback off of whatever Polydox says, because I'd love to hear from you on this one, and then we'll finish up after this. But touching on something I sort of almost raised before, back to how we remember the game and pushing those sort of memory banks a little bit. Another thing that's come up, obviously a lot of people have seen it, talking about the difficulty of the game and these early beta impressions in the starting zones and then moving on from the starting zones from there. Now, I can't comment too much because I have been saying on stream, Tirisfal Glades does feel weirdly a little bit easier than I remember. But guess what?
Yeah,
I didn't play Tirisfal Glades back in the day. I'm just comparing that to Teldrassil and just saying, hey, maybe I'm just a better player. I don't know, but it doesn't feel very difficult. And everyone's like, Josh, settle down. Starting zone's meant to be like that. It's all good. Apparently, when you go to Silverpine or the Barrens or whatnot, the other streamers are saying it gets a lot fucking harder, which is great. That's fantastic. That's how vanilla's supposed to be, because I had 2 or 3 mobs on me, and didn't sweat. Like a mob my level took 49 seconds to kill me. And then 2 mobs were taking like 30 seconds to kill me. And I wasn't doing anything. I was just standing there going, kill me. And it felt weird. But
I had the same experience.
Yeah, but I'm waiting to get to later areas to figure out how I feel about that. But I wanted to ask you guys generally, and I'll start with you, Polly, what you felt about the difficulty, because also a lot of people by now have seen what I've affectionately tongue-in-cheek dubbed the failing caverns run that now has gone around sort of the subreddit and whatnot, and people seeing, oh wow, these guys took 4 to 5 hours to do Wailing Caverns. That's crazy. Maybe that's a testament to the fact that vanilla is a little bit harder than we thought. And everyone talked about steamrolling and whatnot, and that's not going to be the case. Now, without getting into it too much, but just overall in general, Polydox, what have you felt about the difficulty so far? Have you noticed anything?
Well, it's kind of hard to say because I didn't really notice that I was just by basic hits, dying super slow, or it didn't really seem that way. But in the orc starting area on private servers, there's the Vile Familiars, which are like little imp guys. And the private servers, they shoot fireball, shoot fireball, shoot fireball. They don't melee you. In the beta, they might shoot a fireball once every 10 seconds. And so their AI changing like that actually makes them significantly easier, especially as a shaman, because I don't have to wait to get level 4 to get Earthshock to interrupt them. And same thing with, I think it was the Voodoo Trolls on Echo Isle, where on private servers, always at 20%, they always go to heal. In beta, they don't do that. They sometimes do, they sometimes don't. And so in the 1 through 10 experience, I noticed it seemed easier just because of little AI things like that. All
right, Defcamp, what's your sort of final take on the difficulty of the deal, or things you've seen or heard?
I definitely feel like things are easier, a little bit easier, at least in my experience. So we're in a Wailing Cavern, and we had to restart it because the server went down. We're already almost at the end of it.
Yeah. We have just to clarify, you're there right now as we speak, right?
We're there right now. We have a level 17 tank right now, which is pretty low level for Wailing Caverns. And he is doing amazing. And it seems almost like the damage is not very chunky. It's very little bit at a time on the tank. Like it's not. I remember the damage being a lot more in big chunks, like and it being a lot more. Oh my god, like he might get hit and die here. And things seem like they're much more calmer, and then it just doesn't seem. I don't know. Maybe it's just. I don't know. Maybe it's the healing. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's just it feels a little bit easier. It does, and I will say that it doesn't seem that bad right now. And I honestly, if I had to say anything, I would feel that it feels a little bit easier than private servers.
Well, it's interesting to hear you say that. Out of interest, do you know who your tank is?
Yeah. His name's Egan. He just dinged 18 actually. So,
grats.
But we did a group with Bajira. We did a RFC with Bajira, and we just totally demolished RFC. It was ridiculous. It was a joke, honestly.
Okay.
We're all basically, really pretty low level. And I didn't have to sit and drink once, pretty much. It was, but Wailing Caverns should be. And I do say we didn't do the escort quest yet, so I should wait and see, because I honestly don't even think this group will be able to do the escort quest. But if we can, that'll be a huge thing, because the escort
From what
quest,
I heard, the escort quest is easier than in private servers. Okay. Yeah, the mobs don't just spawn after a time; they wait until you kill everything, and then.
Oh wow! Okay, well there you go. So that's So on private servers, the escort quest was pretty challenging. But I got to say, right now, this Wailing Caverns run is going very smooth. We've had no wipes, nothing. Very low leveled guys in here, and we're just tearing through.
All right, well, that's good to hear, and
not to brag or anything.
No. I appreciate it. It's good to get that perspective, because, as I say, that what I'm dubbing again, that the failing caverns run, there were some people have pointed out there were some relatively glaring tactical issues with that one that people have gone, well, this is exactly where they went wrong. X happened, Y happened, Z happened. So I guess, it's not so much a difficulty thing as perhaps just a sitting down and discussing the tactics thing, and you guys might have your tactics together and tear through it. I'm not sure, but it's good to note that you're not sort of saying, well, it's glaringly different. They've jacked up the difficulty to the point that it's just, as long as it is as it was or what have you, or whether they've decided to change the tuning, who knows. But anyway, guys, look, I want to thank you so much for stopping by to give these initial impressions. I'd really like to keep a little bit of a rolling diary on this. Defcamp, I'd love to have you back another time sometime later down the track to give some updated impressions, if that's cool.
Hell yeah, brother. Hell yeah.
Thanks so much, mate. And Polly, we'll stay in touch, mate. Guys, Defcamp, I'll start with you. Thanks so much for dropping by again, mate.
No problem, my man. Josh, anytime. It's always a pleasure. I love coming on the show. And guys, you all know Josh is the man. We love him. He's the best. Thank you so much. Enjoyed it. So I'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks, Defcamp. Appreciate that. And straight back at you, brother. And Polydox, mate, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm glad I'll be able to print this one.
Yeah, it'll be nice to actually be able to hear myself this time. And I love what you do, and I've listened to you pretty much every day at work because I still have about 20 or so more episodes to actually catch up.
Enjoy the ride, mate, and thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a caller. So we'll have to stay in touch and see how everyone goes through this beta. But okay, thanks everyone. Coming later this week on my other podcast, The Cinephiles, we cover 2013's About Time. Yeah, this is a rather funny, very quick story.
Please.
The only
Much
reason my mother found out that I had said porno in my possession was because my older brother, who's 20 years older than me at the time, so he was 35, I was 15,
That's odd.
ratted out myself to my mother saying, I think Joshua has my pornos.
No, so you'd stolen them off your old brother.
A, narc. B, what's he still doing at home?
If you'd like to hear more from the Cinephiles, then please do log on to cinephiles.com. That's SINNERFILES. Or search for the Cinephiles on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. But now, let's get back to Countdown. Alright, it's time for another Countdown to Classic call, and I figured I would basically lay down a few more impressions from the beta now that I've had a few more days to take it all in. You've just heard a call earlier in this episode with a few of us sort of relaying some of the things that we've noticed. That was after about 2 days of the beta, and now I've gotten obviously a very, very regular contributor to the show, Ayle, in here, and we're just going to recount a few more things that we've seen or heard now that we're about a week through this experience. And I want to tell a little bit of my story. Ayle, I want you to tell a little bit of your story. And just generally, let's start with this, mate. This is the second call I actually believe that you're going to be in this episode. You've been so good with always putting your hand up, and I know people enjoy getting your take on everything. But tell us generally how you're enjoying the beta.
Yeah, man, I'm loving it. It's I can't even describe how good it is. To put it into words, to be playing the legit version that just feels so much better than anything I've played.
It's been a surreal experience for sure to see the way that Blizzard has put their spin on it. Now, it feels fantastic. You know, you're going to get a lot of rave reviews if you generally look around online. I can only reflect those. Bugs are absolutely there, like I said in the other call, but overall the experience has been amazing. But during this call, I wanted to touch a bit more on some of the external influences and the effect that they've had on the beta experience. And what I'm referring to there is kind of the streamer effect. And it has produced an environment unlike any that I've seen around a game on Twitch before. And I think a lot of people have noticed this. And I'm happy to be shouted down and said, no, Josh, you know, this has happened before with this MMO or this shooter or whatever. But I've really seen a lot of eyes get thrown towards World of Warcraft Classic over the last week. And more importantly, a lot of those eyes are seeing a lot of people having a lot of fun, and they're seeing community events come together. They're seeing a boatload of world PvP and some amazingly huge battles that we'll get into soon, and the way in which they were coordinated between servers. But Ayle, what do you think? You've actually even dabbled into the world of streaming yourself now. And how do you think the streaming effect has been on WoW Classic so far?
Well, it's been huge. Obviously, if anybody's been paying attention to the streaming at all, Classic WoW beta has passed retail beta or retail WoW. It's not even like 50%. It's like 90% of all the top streams are all Classic. So yeah, the viewership is there. seems like right now almost all eyes are on it.
It's been an experience that a lot of people picked in terms of, I definitely heard before the beta came around, you heard this a year ago, like, oh, this game is going to take over Twitch. And it's just a matter of how long it can hold on to all these eyeballs for effectively. And it's done really, really well. And we've seen amazing things come together, by way of some huge streamers. Everyone's getting on board now. Obviously, Asmongold's there. He was always going to be there. But then we're getting other names like people that have always, enjoyed Classic, but weren't necessarily names that, were running to the forefront when we thought of who was going to be streaming this. And we got things like, instances of Shroud and Seju coming aboard, a number of people who have just really opened this game up to people who maybe didn't really have it on their periphery much at all. And there was a huge Battle of Arathi the other day that a lot of people know about, that had some really fun moves pulled off. I was trying to get, Venruki and Sony in here to talk about their involvement in that. Those guys are flat out streaming a lot. I completely understand. But Ayle, you were there too, weren't you?
I was there, definitely. Right now, I'm in a guild with kind of all of the old TBC PvP legends.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's a great guild, isn't it?
It is. It's pretty neat.
I was lucky enough to somehow score an invite to that guild too, and it's a great group of guys, and they're having a lot of fun. But they put out the call the other day for people to join them at Arathi, and you ran and answered the call. I was too low level, but tell us about what you saw and experienced there. Yeah,
it was pretty crazy. So at one point, Sony Digital basically, like you said, just put out the call in guild like, "Hey, Asmongold is in Arathi. He's trying to get his axe. Let's stop him." Right? So, in order to get the Whirlwind Axe at level 30 for a warrior, it's a level 30 quest, but it's really meant to be done throughout your whole 30s. And the reward, you should get it around 37, because you end up having to kill mobs all through that range. So, the Alliance had an entire raid group out farming the things for Asmongold to get it. So, basically, this meant if we were to build a raid, we would have like a raid-on-raid combat battle.
And obviously all hell broke loose, and, a lot of people had a lot of fun, and there were a number of different streams showing this off with a lot of viewers. It was carnage. It was mayhem. It was World of Warcraft Classic PvP. And I think the greatest thing that I took out of it was we didn't really seem to, now I know it's a beta and, however many people are getting involved, but we didn't really see any server lag. We didn't see any instances of sharding or layering or anything. Everything seemed okay, and everyone was really happy. Was that your technical experience of it?
For the most part, I actually experienced a little bit of sharding potentially in the battle.
Go on.
Although I'm not 100% sure if it's an issue with Farsight or not. There was a point where I got separated from the group, and so I ran off and kind of hid in a bush, Fortnite style, and was using Farsight to see where the battle was. And I wasn't actually able to Farsight and see everybody on the edge of the Highlands. For whatever reason, anybody who went over the line of the Highlands, I lost them. They just went out of view. And actually, I do have it clipped, so I don't know if this is an issue with Farsight in particular, or if it's sharding based on zone boundaries or distances or something. Because I was so far away from the battle that I couldn't tell for sure.
Now, tell me, when, things went down and we sort of seemed to get the horde splitting up into two packs, and Venruki took a number of people, round the side for that great flank that looked so great on stream. Which pack were you part of?
I was in a totally separate pack. So
Okay.
this was around the same time. There was me and a couple of rogues were caught behind the other group. So we actually came in from kind of like a third angle from the back. And so we were on the road there, basically ganking any reinforcements that were coming in to supply the Alliance. Because the whole time there's just pretty much everybody in the beta just kept coming, right there. We were getting more, and the more people that we would get, the more people they would get too. They're just telling everybody get here, everybody go, go, go. So I think it was me and Peo and a couple other rogues were just sitting on the road there, just killing anybody who was coming up the road. And then once they called out for that big battle charge, we came in on the side.
It's did you happen to claim any big scalps?
Yeah, no, I was right there. I killed Stay Safe, and I was there when Asmongold went down. And I actually have a really good clip of killing Towley.
Oh, really? You got a few of them. All right.
Yeah, it's really neat because you're really like bumping shoulders with like all these. It's almost like I was describing it to someone as like like the silver bordered rare elites that you find.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, except players. You bump into these people and you're like, oh, like I recognize that name. I've never played with or against them before, but like I know who they are, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of neat.
Very good. Very good. Well, I'm glad you got to have a bit of fun and sort of take some people down and get involved in that. I'm dying to get to 30 where I can start to get involved as well myself. I'm only, I think, 21 or 22 as of the time of this recording. I've had a few days off work sick and been moping around the house, but at least I've had WoW Classic beta there for me to sort of help me get back on the mend. But it's been something. It's funny you mentioned Stay Safe as well. Actually, he randomly came after me right on the Silver Pine Hillsbrad border about 3 hours ago. There was no one around him. There was no one around me. I'm level 20 at the time. He's level 30, obviously. And he came straight after me. And I'm like, all right, settle down. I got away really easily with, I just popped a swiftness potion. But I was just like, settle down, big guy. So it is fun, I to bump into those names and see the nameplate come up and go, oh, here we go. All right. It's this beta server is really a unique thing and a relatively once in a lifetime thing. And it's been fun to sort of just see the way that it's portrayed publicly as well. And it's actually gotten me thinking that, even though personally I'm also one of those people that would absolutely avoid a huge streamer server, I would watch the shit out of it. Like, there's been some really entertaining stuff going up on Twitch. And, the battle for Azeroth, as other people have been saying, is happening, ironically, in Classic. Like, have you noticed this grand scale sort of just depriving people of experiencing the content because, hey, man, it's Horde versus Alliance?
Absolutely. And I think that's what kind of makes it great is that you have this MMO that is more sandboxy than, most of the things that have come after it. And it's kind of a lot like what Kevin Jordan talked about is that they let the players make the decisions, right? You kind of get to decide how it's going to play in a, if you want to go out and have world PvP battle to stop them from doing something, you can do that.
And world PP.
Did I say world PP? I might have.
That's all right, man. Now, look, it's you mentioned to me earlier off call as well that obviously we're lucky enough to be running around in the same guild together, but there's some fucking heavy hitters in this guild as well. And I didn't realize when I got in, I was like, I knew like one or two of them was there, but there's some big names. And I have seen them chatting in guild chat. It's fun to see them organizing all of their events. People like Sony, people like Venruki, Seju, Shroud. Like, it's insane. But tell me some of the interactions you've had with them and maybe some other big PvP names from yesteryear that I might not know that you've rubbed shoulders with in the guild.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Like, Seju is probably one of the biggest. He's, BlizzCon world champion from the PvP tournament, the PvP arena tournament.
Yep.
They actually razz him quite a bit about it in guilds for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. But yeah, basically, like, the names that I noticed are all huge guys from kind of like the TBC Wrath era. So, guys like Seju and Sony Digital and Azrael and Zico, Speed Shift, Pika. Like, those are all like multi-time gladiators. Better than gladiators. Like, these guys competed at the highest level for, prize money essentially, right? And so basically they've been dueling a ton. And I've kind of been like, whenever I see they're dueling somewhere, I go there and I try and get my duels in with them as well. Kind of sharpen my teeth, so to say.
And how have you been going?
It's been actually, I've been doing pretty well. I believe Shaman are the strongest. I'm not like I don't think I'm the greatest player mechanically. I feel like I'm a solid player. These guys are definitely better, and I also kind of have the Shaman home court advantage. Having Wind Fury at 30, I basically have all my kit as enhancement Shaman, so I'm really strong. I even managed to take a couple duels from Venruki and Seju. So
very good.
that has me on a little bit of a high right now.
Very good. Congratulations, mate. Oh, that's fantastic to hear. I didn't realize I've bumped into Azrael a few times. I didn't realize he was a big PvPer. That's fantastic. He seems like a really nice guy.
It's amazing how skilled these guys are. Like when I'm fighting against them, I hadn't really lost dueling against a mage yet until, I fought against these guys, and it's just next level. I even had a duel against Soda Poppin', and he wiped the floor with me basically. As a druid. It was just like wasn't even close. So,
have you made it to Gurubashi yet?
I have actually. I was at that Gurubashi event yesterday, and there was 3 raids. There was an Alliance raid, and then there was a Sony Digital Horde raid. It was either Soda Poppin' or maybe Tips had a separate raid, and so it was basically 3 raid battle in the in Gurubashi Arena.
Excellent. Well, it all sounds like fun, mate, and I can't wait to hopefully over the next week or so get to 30 and join you guys. And I'd love to run a dungeon with you as well at some point. So, mate, we'll get there one day soon.
Absolutely. I'm going to be playing tonight, so we should go on. I'll tank SFK for you if you want.
Oh, I'd love it. I just want to sort of I was going to do this by way of a bit of a monologue, but I figure I'll do it with you on the call so you can bounce off of me a little bit. Now, I just wanted to tell people a bit about what I've been doing, because I do get some listeners and more lately saying, Josh, tell us a bit more about what you've been doing in game. It's great that you take all these callers, but some people do want to hear about me for one reason or another. So I'll tell you. I am leveling an undead priest, and I'm having a hell of a time with it. I'm actually really glad that I went with the undead priest, because all it's done is confirm my huge inkling that this is what I wanted to do for Classic. And I, loved going through the undead starting area. Even though I tripped up, a lot of my people who watch me will realize that I accidentally rolled on the PvE server. Hence why in the other calls you'll hear me going, "Hey man, this is a fucking ghost town. There's no one around." That's because everyone was on the PvP server. But I still found it odd that the PvE server was so dead. But I've healed a few dungeons now. I've gone through, RFC. I've gone through Wayland Caverns twice now, all as a healer, and I've got to say, I love healing, so look out. I know my guild thinks I'll be rolling Shadow, and that's still kind of the plan, but it's under a huge attack from healing because I'm loving that. But also just compiling gold, and I'm the weirdo in me is getting a kick out of trying to amass some small fortune. I'm running around at level 21 or whatever now, and I've got, I'm all trained up, and I've got my 7 gold on me, and I'm just loving it, just not having to worry about being broke and working that auction house, and it's bringing back a lot of very fond memories. I bought my first rare the other day to flip someone. I mean, I know it's a beta and no one cares, but I bought a rare for like 8 silver. So I was like, oh, fuck it, I'll take it. And then now I'm trying to flip that for 75 silver. But just all these little things are coming back to me, and I'm having a great time, mate. What have you been doing? What have you rolled? Tell people what class, and how have you enjoyed the dungeons and everything?
Yeah, so I rolled a shaman. That's a little bit different than you. I didn't roll this to confirm that I was going to play anything. I'm already pretty set that I'm going to be playing a warrior, but I love playing and leveling a shaman. In fact, I'm going to have an alt for sure. So this was kind of let me dabble and see. Maybe it can change my mind. Maybe it'll swing me over. But if not, I'm going to really enjoy it. It's probably my favorite class to level. I've been doing the same thing as you. I've been doing a bunch of dungeons, a whole bunch of PvP, as much dueling as I can, and a lot of testing. I noticed that just from watching streams and stuff on the first day that there really wasn't a lot of shaman streamers and people testing things. So I really wanted to kind of make a commitment that I'm going to try and play this class. I'm going to pick the least played race, which was Troll, and I'm going to try to answer like anybody's questions, And I'd actually made a deal the day before. I said, if I get in, I'll stream. And then I did, and I'd never streamed before.
And are you loving it?
It's good. I'm not sure if I'm loving it. It's interesting. It's challenging. It's a lot harder than you think, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And for me, who's someone who's not really like a super public person, these interviews are rather intimate. You're not in front of like an audience, live studio audience. Yeah. So doing that, I found it actually be pretty tough and quite draining.
Right. Are you talking about these interviews that we do on the show, obviously?
Yeah. So like I say I'm like not a public person, but like I have been doing, some Countdown to Classic interviews and whatnot. But I find streaming to be a whole different.
I wanted to ask you about your experience in Wailing Caverns, because I, had a bit of a tongue-in-cheek fun on the last call that is in this episode as well about, that failing caverns run. A lot of people going like, what is going on? I ran it twice. We did it in about an hour and 20 minutes, in case people are wondering. The guys I was running it with weren't private server players for the most part. We didn't wipe the first run we didn't wipe. The second run we wiped at the very start, just worked out a couple of kinks with swapping tanks, and then we were all good from there. But I had a really good, smooth run, and people who hadn't played the game in ages were like, hey, this is great. It felt challenging, but it was a bit of an introduction to a decent dungeon, and we had a really good time. And, how did you go through WC, and what kind of times were you pulling in, and did you get any cool loot? I know I got those cloth shoulders, just then that you can't equip until level 22 that restore like 4 health per 5 seconds or something. I got a fair few good greens out of there as well, but how'd you do?
Yeah, I was lucky. I did 2 runs of it. And I got 2 pieces of the leather, I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's blanking on the top of my head, but it's a leather set. It's purple. It looks fabulous. And, as well, the staff quest from there gives a really good staff. I noticed a huge power spike, in leveling, at the point that I got the staff. It just made a world of difference.
Is that the one with all the spirit?
Yeah, it's like 7 stam, 7 int, 7 spirits. The crescent staff, I believe.
Okay,
I think you probably have this.
I was thinking of another one. There's another one that drops from Verdun, I think, that has like plus 12 spirit.
Oh, okay. No, mine was the quest reward. And
right.
The groups I were in too. I don't really remember anything in particular. We did actually have trouble on Verdant, the end boss.
Oh, really?
Or like the second end boss
What happened?
At one point. Well, our tank basically wasn't using mitigation abilities. I think he was in defensive stance possibly, but he wasn't shield blocking. He didn't thunderclap, and he didn't have demo shout up. So he was actually getting chunked really hard. And while he didn't die and we didn't wipe, there was a couple tense moments. I actually had to help out on healing a little bit. So
yeah,
it's kind of interesting. It's like even really early on in those dungeons, it's pushing you in a direction that challenges you, I feel like. And if you're kind of not paying attention, like shit can go real bad quick.
Well, I had a bit of an oh fuck moment on Verdun on the second run, because my tank was a bit keen. He was running in a lot when I was out of mana throughout the instance, and that's fine. It's just up Wailing Caverns. It's really not a big deal at the end of the day. You can, get by. But he asked to rebuff him with Fort just before Verdun. So I said, all right, wait 1 minute, all buffs incoming. So I apply Fort to him, and then of course I start, because everyone had run out of their Fort. So I start reapplying Fort to everyone. But as soon as he got his, and I was up to like the 3rd, 4th person, he went charging into Verdun, and I'm down to 20% mana. And I'm like, oh my God, you are killing me. And so I thought, this is a wipe. He goes in with me on, 20% mana, trying to wait for the 5-second rule to kick in or whatever. And it was fine. We barely sweated. Like Verdun was hitting hard, but it was totally manageable. And, we had a really good time. And yeah, I mean, I can see that Verdun can cause trouble if perhaps he was well geared. I just have no idea, but, it's all been a bit of fun, and I really enjoyed sort of going through there again. Mate, next thing I'll ask is, out of interest, how are you treating your items and your auction house and all that jazz? Are you trying to make money? Do you not give a fuck, obviously, because it's the beta, or what are you doing?
Yeah, I've been doing what I can to make as much money as possible. I've heard rumors that there's going to be a dueling tournament coming up, so I've been trying to, stack the odds in my favor a bit by getting some money, buying some good gear, doing some farming runs. I actually was up to 30 gold earlier today.
Oh, Jesus, you're killing it. Here I am sort of feeling good about my 7 or whatever, and 6 or 7, you're on 30.
Well, it's like I said, we've been doing some dungeon farming runs. I actually think we might be the first group to clear SM Library, which we did earlier. And from that, we actually got a whole, basically every green that was dropping was between level 28 and 30 requirement. And so those have just been selling like hotcakes on the Age. Like I've been selling them for 2 gold a piece, and like each person in there probably got, 3 or 4, right?
Yeah.
So I've just been making a ton of money from them.
You know what else is selling like hotcakes and going for a very good price? Swift Thistle, for probably
Really?
obvious reasons. Isn't that the Swift Thistle tea that all those PvPers would want?
Right. Yes. The Thistle tea, the rogues love chugging this.
Yeah. So I think Payo bought some of mine the other day because they're going nuts with all that rogue stuff.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But anyway, mate, let's finish it up on this one. Bugs. Now, think about anything else you might have seen, because I'll just let people know. Look, I've been trying to get my character to 30, and I know a lot of listeners have been posting bugs in the Discord that I do want to turn my attention to very soon. I wanted to try and get to cap and then figure it out from there. But along the way, I've been dutifully reporting everything I can. A lot of invisible mobs, a lot of mobs stuck in the ground. Well, not a lot. I should take that back. A few. Like, that's the main bug that I'm coming across. Nodes that are appearing on the map that aren't actually there, nodes that are floating, just little things like that I have picked up on. Now, they're easily fixable, so I'm really not too worried. I would think that if I'm giving the locations of, hey, this node at this kind of location, you need to work on it, I'm sure they'll get there. But have you noticed anything horrible, or just more sort of really, really minor things like me?
Yeah, I've actually noticed some major things. The main one that they reported, the Stone Skin Totem, that one's a really big deal, and me and Viv did some testing on that. For people who don't know, when you drop Stone Skin Totem and you're in a group with a shaman, you basically keep that buff permanently until you lock. And so, Stone Skin reduces the melee damage you take by a certain like flat number, and so you basically have like really good reduction, right? There's a fair amount of shaman issues as well. For example, like totems can be AoE'd, which shouldn't happen.
Yep.
As well, we're working on some weapon swap macros. There's like the possibility for kind of newer style macros. And while working on some weapon swap ones, it actually made it so a rogue I was testing with, he couldn't unequip his weapons. He had to relog for it. So we've been doing pretty much as much testing as we can, trying to get stuff like that. So there has been, I don't know if those are major, but I felt like they're noteworthy. As well, I have seen actual sharding. Have you seen it as well?
No, I haven't spotted it. It's sharding as opposed to layering.
Yes. So you'll be running, and then you'll see like a mob at some point in front of you, and it will just like totally disappear. It'll just like vanish.
Yeah.
And then you can move back and it'll reappear. It's similar to what some of the clips some people have been posting.
Yeah.
Basically the same thing. It's happened to me in probably 5 or 6 different areas.
Okay. What's your take on, now they have put up this list of things that aren't bugs. Your memory is screwing with you guys. These aren't bugs. A lot of people are saying these common ones, but they're fine. One of them was obviously one quick one that I want to touch on, then we'll get into the big one, which is damage. Aggro range. Now, I was on stream the other day, and I was literally like face to face with a bear in Silverpine that was my level, that I could have reached out and touched it almost, and it wasn't drawing aggro. And the listeners were going, the viewers were going, this is wrong, this looks wrong. The bear didn't aggro me until it got 3 yards away. Wouldn't aggro at 4, aggroed at 3. It was really weird. Blizzard comes out and says, we hear you about all the aggro ranges, but everything, trust us, is working as intended and as it was in vanilla. Have you experienced anything that's made you scratch your head?
Yeah, I felt the same way, that aggro ranges have felt funny, but they've been different. Like, there's been times where things have aggroed from really far away or further than I expect, and then times where they won't. So I've kind of been wondering, like, is it possible that there just isn't a flat aggro range and different mobs have different aggro ranges? Like, maybe bears have a smaller range and, humanoids have a larger one, perhaps?
Seems to be the case at this point, yeah.
So, like, I wonder if it's things like that where we remember like something very specific, and it's actually not the case. Like, the data is different, it's variable, or like they're so sure. Like, they made the statement that it's not an issue. So what can it be then, right?
Yeah.
Like it feels wrong, but
Well, the next thing that a lot of people are now piping up about is this damage. And there's now sort of a fair bit of back and forth. And Blizzard has said, oh, the stone skin thing and damage. And it's not that bad. We're working on it. We figured out what it is. We'll get right on it. But a lot of people are noticing a lot of things now in sort of higher level ranges in those sort of 20 and 30 zones that just seem off. Now, I haven't gotten there yet. But have you experienced anything that has made you query Blizzard about the damage?
Not really. It's tough for me to tell because I'm a shaman and pretty much anything I run, I'll be dropping stone skin. And I think that just reduces the damage taken overall. So I'm not sure. There's been times where I feel like we probably should have wiped in dungeons when we pulled too many mobs and we didn't, and it was manageable. But like I said, at that point, is it the stone skin bug that still exists, or is it because the damage isn't high enough?
Right. We'll see what happens. So just to sort of round out, mate, any other final thoughts on the beta? I can tell you that I'm loving it. As I said, looking forward to pressing on, looking forward to getting involved in PvP. I haven't really had my first proper PvP encounter outside of, actually, I forgot one more funny story. Method Josh randomly, ran into my group in the part just before you go into the instance in the Wailing Caverns, and his group decimated us. We made the critical mistake of staring at them going, should we attack? Should we attack? And they just basically said, fuck it, and took us out. So they got the jump on us. So that was a fun little bump in as well. But, outside of the bumping in to stay safe as well, I haven't had a proper one-on-one PvP fight, so I'm really looking forward to getting into that for the first time. But anything else finally to finish up on that you'd want to say about the beta?
Honestly, it's in great shape. You can tell there are issues. They are watching everything and going through it with a fine-tooth comb. The reason that they have this beta is so that, issues can get fixed and things can get looked at. But even with, the issues that there are out there, it looks amazing and it plays even better. And I'm really excited for it. And I really just can't wait to, continue to sink my teeth into it.
Fantastic. All right, mate. Well, look, you are such a trooper. You've been on the show so much lately, and I feel bad. I feel like I'm sort of pushing the friendship somewhat, but you've been such a good friend of the show and such a good friend to me. And thank you so much again for answering this call, mate, and coming back on the show.
No worries.
And while we're doing it, let's plug your Twitch channel.
Okay, yeah, the Twitch TV/Ayle Gaming. And you can find me on there. I'll be streaming pretty much every evening until I get sick of it. So you can check me out there.
Fantastic. Please do go and check out Ayle, and that's Ayle, Ayle, everyone. So go and support him. All right, man. I'll talk to you later.
Sounds good, man.
Hi, everyone. Josh here. I just want to take a quick moment to remind you that while Countdown to Classic will always be a podcast you can get for free, if you do happen to really enjoy the show and find yourself always coming back for more, then please do check out the show's Patreon page to see how you can help keep the lights on at Countdown to Classic, and even vote on show content as the show continues to bring you more and more classic WoW goodness. Alternatively, if monthly subscriptions aren't your thing, you can always visit the show's tip jar over at Ko-Fi, with that link being in the show notes and on the website too. Now, let's get back to the show. All right, it's time for another Countdown to Classic call, and I'm so happy to be joined today by Linkson. Linkson, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself, Josh?
Doing really well, mate. And I'm so glad that you approached me for this particular call, because I feel like this one is really, really important for a lot of people to hear, given the news that we got last week with the beta. Now, obviously, a lot of people will be familiar with the fact that Blizzard has introduced, whether or not it's a new term or an old term, you can perhaps explain that to us, what the history of it is. But we got introduced to this concept of layering. And a lot of people who don't work in IT, who aren't necessarily engineers, or, technically proficient in that aspect, are sort of scratching their heads going, well, what exactly is layering? Myself included. And when I did that call on the show, I'd only found out about this fucking thing about 2 hours before that and was still trying to wrap my head around it. And you approached me and You were very, very kind and polite in your response, but you must have been tearing your hair out through that call because you were like, Josh, please get someone with some technical proficiency on the show to explain to everyone what layering is. You're killing me. And so we're happily going to do that today. So Linkson, let's start with this. Why don't you explain to people what it is that you do for a living and why you're the right person to talk to for this call?
So I will start off by saying a lot of this is speculation based on my background, but in the way that they're explaining everything, I think I have a good grasp of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say a data center engineer or guru would be much better for this conversation, but we'll just go forth with it. I have worked in IT for 10 years. 6.5 of those years have been primarily in IT security as an engineer and an architect, architecting applications within the software world to perform securely and doing penetration tests and making sure that everything in there is good. If they have any issues, I send those issues back to them. They get them fixed, right? So I've been doing that for 6.5 years. I've been in IT as a whole for about 10 years, right? So a lot of these concepts that they're talking about are actually just video game names for common IT concepts that have been around for a while. So
when they say layering and they're doing the Dr. Evil sort of air quotes lasers, that's just it's another name for something you've been familiar with for some time.
Right. So I think it's better off giving everyone a start to how WoW originally was formed and how it was set up in a data center, right? Because everything that they're pulling is on a server somewhere, correct? So if you get this mentality of, okay, day one, WoW, you have this server rack that is, I played on Shadow Song, so let's use that as the server name. This entire rack is set up in a RAID environment. All these things are linked. All these CPUs, all these hard drives are linked to be Shadow Song, right? It's a hard server that is a lot of different pieces are working together to create one server. You can think about that today like your laptop or your computer. That is one server. That is one endpoint, right? That is how it functioned for years. Then they started pulling over today's technology, which is basically shared services. So they can take that same rack of servers and that same hardware and split it up into multiple servers now. So think about having like a Ubuntu OS and a Windows OS on your laptop. So you have two different servers, two different partitions going, and they could possibly be going at the same time if you have it set up remotely, right?
Okay.
Are you with me?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. So basically, Patricia tried to explain this to me yesterday as well. She works in the industry and she was sort of having a bit of a laugh over it as well. Now, and I'll say the same thing to you. You've done very, very well, but let's explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Now, from what you've just said, I'm gathered you've got the physical server, and then, as Patricia explained, from that you can sort of build virtual servers off of that as you partition it. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct. So the way, and this is actually the analogy that Blizzard tried to use but didn't use for non-IT folks well, is think of a glass of water, right? When that glass of water fills up, they start filling up another glass of water. That's exactly what they said, right? But what you're picturing is you're picturing two different glasses of water separate from one another. Think of an 8-ounce glass of water inside a 16-ounce glass and inside of a 32-ounce picture, right?
Yep.
So you start pouring water in, and players, you start pouring water into that center glass, 8 ounces. When it hits 3,000, it's going to fill up and overflow into the second one. That would be the second layer, right? So what happens is when you hit that threshold, and they said it was 3,000, and I guarantee you that's not a hard number because they've already told us that guild, if you're in a specific guild, you're going to go where your guild's at, right? You're going to go in your guild's layer.
Yep.
So that starts filling up the second one. And then the third one. And this is all sitting on the same coaster. And think of the coaster as a server. So you have these 3 containers within that one coaster of a server that have 3 different areas. And all it is a mirror, right? It's basically a production mirror that's connected. So you have the same environment for within 3 different areas. Does that make more sense?
Yep, I'm with you now. So the analogy that we got on the show that you may have still been tearing your hair out over when you heard, I think it was, and it sounds like they were halfway there. And apologies, it was I think it was Jacoby. It was either Jacoby or Batlord. I think it was Jacoby who explained the pitcher of water concept, just like you've explained, but a little bit different. And it sounds like your extrapolation on that point does make more sense. So they were halfway there, but perhaps missing a few little elements, because the way they told it was you fill up the one pitcher of water, and then as soon as that's full, it just spills over into the one sitting next to it, which you're saying is, slightly incorrect, because then that would create the situation. And I'm wondering by your analogy as well, if it's somewhat the same, because what I'm confused about is you wait for the overflow and then the next server starts to fill. But doesn't that next server start from one person, and you effectively could have a situation where there's like 5 people on one server going, hey man, we've been laid over here. Where is everyone?
Yes. So the difference here is, so getting back to the basics, right? So sharding, the difference in sharding is you have all these glasses of water. None of them are connected. They're all on this big table. Think of the big table as the server, right? You have 1,000 glasses of water. And the difference between this is, it sounds like layering is one to a larger scale. So it's server based in that you're only going to have a few layers versus the shards, which is much more dynamic. The other thing is with sharding is every entry point for sharding is different. So if you walk in a zone and your buddy flies into a zone, you could fly into 2 different shards, right? We've seen that 1,000 times, and you got to get the invite to get to that shard. Here, if you walk in, when you log in, you're already in the layer. Okay. There's no extra shards connected that you're going to connect to, right?
Okay.
When your buddy logs in, he's logging into yours. And they brought up queue times, and the speculative part of this is, if most of your guild is already in a layer and that layer is full, you may have to queue and wait. I don't know if that's the case. That's completely speculative, right? And the security part of me is what's saying, hey, one, why I was pulling my hair out so much during the call, because I listen to the calls when I'm driving from Houston to Austin on different clients, and I'm screaming at the phone like, it's not it's not sharding, right? You can't just have your buddy in a different layer.
Yeah,
it's going to be very hard to try to guess when that next layer is going to come up, because you got to know how full each layer is, and the security measure that they may invoke is, if you're in the same server, if you're in the same guild as your buddy, you may just have to wait for that layer to open. And I don't know that though. So,
well, I'm so glad while you were driving along that you didn't have an accident while you were screaming at me, because I'll wear that one, because I distinctly remember myself saying at one point during that call, oh, it's like sharding, but on a more global basis. But as you're saying, it's distinctly different from that. But it's something that I'm so glad again that you're explaining it to us, because my sort of very crude explanation of it, when I say, oh, it's just sharding, but bigger, a lot of people are using that same description. And I watched a shitload of streams yesterday with a lot of streamers going, oh yeah, layering, it's just sharding but with continents. So again, when you hear that, you've obviously explained it much better, and sort of you can lay to rest those sort of elementary explanations.
Right. And the big difference here is sharding is extremely dynamic. It's almost to a point where it runs itself. There's not a person over there picking which person goes to which shard, right? If you walk into a zone, you fly to a zone, you hurt to a zone, you and the other 2 people may end up on 3 different shards. Whereas with layering, because it's the entire continent, and when they say continent, the reason why they're saying that is because Kalendor and Azeroth are 2 different servers, basically connected, right? So you can get there, but it's like an instance-based thing, right? So the continent, once you're on that continent, you're not going to another layer. When you cross zones, that's not another layer. It's that big. So once you're in, you're stuck, right? The other thing is, it's going to be very hard to predict when that next layer is going to pop up and have your friends be able to get on it to exploit resources. Now, again, the security side of me comes up and says, resources could be shared over every layer. They could be at the server level, and only one Black Lotus, for instance, will only pop on one of the 3 layers. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that it's not exploitable. And then once it pops, say you have 2 layers up, right? Once it pops on layer 1, somebody harvests it, then it'll pop on layer 2. Or then it'll pop on layer 1 again, right? It might be a dynamic. You don't know where it's going to pop. And we already know that's the case, right? We know the spawn points, but we don't ever know when it's going to come up. So that's the reason why they're saying layering is this new technology that they want to try out, is to try to get rid of that exploitation behavior. They want to get the farmers to stop being able to exploit the different shards at that point, right? Yep. And my understanding is they're doing this so that they're testing it in Classic so they can move it to retail, is my feeling. That's normally the case. Right? Okay,
yeah. So in your heart of hearts, I know there's a little bit of speculation involved here from what you've just said, but if I had to sort of press you and say, well, mate, what do you think is going to happen? Is this something that is going to be able to be exploited, or do you think Blizzard's all over it? What would you guess?
Yes, so the security side of me comes out again. Everything's exploitable at some point. As a security engineer, what you want to do, or as a security professional, what you want to do is you want to make that exploit so either not worth it or so difficult to pull off that it's just not worth your time. And in layering, it seems like trying to estimate when the next layer is going to pop up and how to get on that next layer, they haven't given those details, right? So you have to know when the layer is about to hit 3,000 and tell your buddy, hey, log on. But they may have security measures behind that saying, if you're in a guild with if you're in your guild and your guild's already logged on layer 1, you have to log on to layer 1, right? Or if you're on this continent and you get invited to someone invites you to layer 2, for instance, right? Because you're in world chat, there may be a timer, right? So you may have to wait a specific amount of time before you can go out of combat, right? Combat could automatically trigger, hey, you can't jump layers. There's different preventative measures on the server side that they can install that keeps people from exploiting that. And Blizzard's been fairly good at trying to nip exploits in the butt. Not in the recent years. Sharding has really screwed that up, but I think this is one thing that they're trying to look at to fix sharding.
All I can think of right now is an analogy when I hear you say that, effectively entering each layer might be quite dynamic and unpredictable and hard to do. And that's what the direction Blizzard might head in, is I'm thinking of like, they make it so we're Marty McFly getting in the DeLorean, trying to make sure we hit the cable when the lightning hits the clock tower at the precise second. We're at 88 miles per hour and bam, you're in the next layer.
Right. No. I don't think it's gonna be as easy as sharding, right? Because I mean, sharding is so exploitable. You can literally walk out of a zone, walk back in, and be in another shard. Because it's set up as dynamic. Okay. It's set up as a dynamic statute to keep populations correct and to keep overcrowding or unbalanced. And everyone will tell you, sharding's not balanced. I've been killed by the horde so many times, it's not funny. Just horde going through. Oh, there's a little paladin. Let's kill him real quick and then keep going. And then, I shard back in and then I'm on Alliance shard where they're doing the same thing to the horde. And it's like, come on, guys, you got to get this right.
Well, let me ask you this. Now that, and that's a fantastic explanation. I thank you so much for all of that. If we delve into what you've seen or what I've seen as well over the last couple of days, have you happened to catch some of the clips of examples of layering on the beta so far?
I have not been able to get it because I honestly don't know. I haven't seen the population cap get that high yet. I don't know if 3,000 people are, or whatever the cap may be. Have you seen it yet?
I have. And here's what we're going to do, mate. I'm going to send you a link and I'll edit the call so that you're going to watch this link and then we're going to comment it afterwards. So everyone listening at home will have a seamless transition between you not seeing it and then you seeing it, and then we'll get some commentary. So just wait 1 second. All right, mate. So I've just shown you 3 clips there. One of them from our friend Defcamp, who that clip blew up and a lot of people saw it, and another 2. And just for people's reference, the 2 clips that I showed outside of Defcamp's was the one going around of Alkaiser X and TMB Devotion, if you've seen those ones. One in the Baron, well, 2 in the Barons, and then there was Defcamp's in the Tower. So, mate, you've seen all of those now, and you think that could be a variety of things. Just explain to people your first thoughts of what you've just seen.
So looking at that, it looks extremely akin to what we know as today as sharding is. They say, phasing, and I think it may, at this point, I mean, it's speculative, but we have to hope that this is a bug and it needs to be reported, right? Because my feeling is that with layering, they're trying to do it to where once you're logged into a layer, you're within that layer, and that layer not only is for the zone that you're in, but every zone connected to that continent. And this may just be a bug where something happened during the beta that calls that sharding. There may be a function built in that says, oh, this one's getting full, phase him over to this. And that function wasn't pulled out, of the code, right? To allow that, okay, this layer's getting full. We don't pull people within this layer out. We put all the new people in the new one. Does that make sense?
Yep. All right, Linkson, we're adding to what you've just said. Actually, we're recording this the next day, and Linkson had another think and another watch of those clips, and he's just wanted to add something in. So, Linkson, what did you want to add on to what you just said?
Right. So I think I was talking, if I remember correctly, we were talking about the possibility that this is beta and that this was possibly a bug from sharding that was ported over. But on second thought and second look at this, it may have been the reversal of the layer, in that those people that experienced this, because it was so isolated, may have been on layer 2 already, and layer 1 got to a point where the server said, hey, I'm empty enough. Everyone from layer 2 everyone needs to come to layer 1. And then those people were phased over back to layer 1, eliminating layer 2 until it's needed again. This is speculative, and it's only a possibility at this point, but it makes a whole lot more sense to me looking at the overall design of layering. Normally, when you're dealing with these type of concepts, one of the simplest answers is normally the right answer, and that's kind of the simplest answer I could come to was there was either a bad port of a sharding functionality, or the easier answer is they were moving from layer 2 back to layer 1 because layer 1 had emptied out.
So, I mean, everyone's running around obviously saying, phasing, this is phasing, look how horrible, mobs coming and going, what is going, people dying, it's all unfair, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, another thing that has sort of struck me is I do see that concept of phasing come up a lot. And, we've talked about sharding, we've talked about layering. Can you just explain to people what phasing is for a bit of finality?
So phasing is the point at which the server is deciding where to put people, right? It's deciding, okay, this person, the current area or shard that this person on is empty, but this one is about half full. We're going to switch this person from this shard to this shard so they have more gameplay and they have more people to interact with. It's a dynamic function built within the code base to basically keep the unpopulated shards empty unless needed. Does that make sense?
Yep. So when you see things like this and people freak out in the beta going, oh my God, this is going to be horrible for Classic, would you sort of say, relax, they might be working out the kinks, or what do you think?
So what we need to realize here is, one, after what, are we at 4 days of testing of beta now?
Yeah.
After 4 days of testing, we have 3 solid examples of something happening on the back end that looks like phasing or sharding. If we were playing BFA, we would have seen this within first 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how dynamic it really is in retail. What my assumption here is that something may be wrong and that these are bugs that need to be reported to Blizzard to fix. But so far, so good. This is a beta. People aren't paying to play this game yet. They're there to bug test. That's why they want people like this who are going to report this type of bug, and not me who's just going to go, oh, fanboy, I'm killing stuff, right? They want people to actually report these type of things. And I'm assuming that is what this is. Again, all of this is speculative. I could be talking out of my butt, but from my experience, it looks like a virtualization error happened.
Okay. Now, mate, I'll finish up the call on this point, and I just want to get into your personal feelings, given your background as well, on whether or not you are for or against layering. And, you know, you've heard a few thoughts on the show already. Personally, I would prefer not to see it in. I understand why they're doing it. I don't want people to think that, you know, I don't get it. It's all good. I understand we're eliminating queues and we're making the game playable. That's fine. You know, personally, it's just something that, you know, I've already stated on the show many times. Like, I'm still happy to do the queue and just play the game with everyone in the same place. Some people might say, Josh, that's a very archaic school of thought, and I appreciate that. But, Linkson, I want to ask you, explain to people why you're either for or against it and what the real pros and cons of layering here are for Classic.
Okay, so one thing that I've felt this entire time that people really need to wrap their head around is this project, Classic as a whole, has cost Blizzard nothing but money to this point. Mm-hmm. They have made not a dime off of this yet. Subscription counts have not gone up, right? So this isn't a very expensive endeavor for a company. The company is there to make money. People are always worried about, you know, oh, this is a money grab. This is this. This is that. Yeah. It's all about, yes, it is all about money. If they're not going to make profit from Classic, it's going away.
How dare they take their place in a capitalist system?
Right. We got to think about it in the sense that phasing / layering is much easier. Now, if you talk to me, you talk to you talk to a Defcamp, you talk to Estevan, right? We were there during the days where queuing was a thing. I waited 45 minutes sometimes to get into a server. That was fine. I rated hardcore. I got up to Nax, right? I was one of the few who enjoyed the game that much that I would sit there and wait. The vast majority of people aren't going to want to wait. Yeah. So we need Blizzard. I say we. Blizzard understands that at a high level. Like, hey, fanboys and neckbeards, we understand you're okay with waiting, but we have 1 million+ players that aren't okay with waiting and will cancel their subscription, and we don't want them to. We're going to make you happy. We're going to make them happy. We have to find a happy median here. What layering is in my brain is thinking, okay, they're trying to create the best of both worlds in sharding and hard servers. We've already been told layering is going away in phase 2. After phase 1, it's gone, right? We know that. People are afraid that they're going to go back on their word and they're not going to do that. My feeling is if Classic does that well that they still need it in phase 2, they're just going to pop up new servers and offer server transfers. That's what they did back in vanilla, right? Anytime a server either got too full or too dead, they said, hey, you're transferring. Here's a free transfer. Right now, pick your server. Otherwise, you're going to this server. Shadow Song, perfect example. The server I was on was decommed and then sold to the highest bidder. And unfortunately, I was not the highest bidder for one of those server rounds.
Oh, you put in for it?
No, dude, I was in college and so broke that I was like, hey, maybe I might, $100, $200, I might get it. Yeah. After it hit the $1,000 mark, I was like, dang it, I need to make money.
Will you accept the lint from my pocket?
Right. Will you accept my deepest gratitude of I'm a broke college student? No. So yeah, that mentality has gone away. My son is busting in the room.
That's all right, mate. That's all right. And that's the perfect point to wind up anyway, mate. Thanks so much for everything that I've really, really enjoyed this chat. I can't thank you enough, Linkson. You might have to become the show's sort of go-to authority. Hello, Linkson, son. How are you? It's good to see you. No. Don't apologize.
Actually,
mate.
His name is Joshua.
Oh, there you go. What a legend. I love him already. Okay, fantastic. Mate, you'll have to become the show's go-to authority on the tech side of things if you're up for that. We'd be happy to touch base with you again in the future.
Yeah, anytime you need anything, just DM me, man. It's no problem. I will explain it to my best of my ability. I would love to have another actual data center engineer.
Yeah.
Linkson, you're full of crap. You're a security guy. Stop breaking my system and shut up.
It's funny. I was thinking about that because what I'm picturing now is when you were talking about 15 minutes ago, I was picturing, no, that's all right.
Sorry, it's 2-year-old.
No, that's right. I was having a laugh because I was picturing the guy driving along now, listening to this call, getting all angry, going, "What the fuck? No, this is not right." And what we'll do is we'll do like an Inception, the call within the call within the call that keeps leading down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's layering, right? That's how it...
Exactly. All right, mate. We'll talk to you later. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me. God bless.
All right, it's time for the last dance, and I am so sad to have to say those words. We've got Kevin Jordan here for his final chat with all of us, the Swan Song. Kevin, it's so good to have you here, but it's also such a bittersweet moment after everything we've been through over the last, sort of 2 to 3 months. How are you, mate?
Doing great. Yeah, but also sad. I'm determined not to make this the last time we put something together. So,
I'm so happy to hear you say that because I thought you've definitely earned a rest. You have put in some hard yards for Countdown to Classic and for the community. But I was going to mention that. I was like, I certainly hope it's not the last time we hear from you. And it's so wonderful. It warms my heart to hear you say that. And I'm sure everyone will be elated to hear you say that as well. But we're doing something a little bit special for this one. Before we get to introducing sort of who I've got on the call, one more time, as we will always do for you, Kevin, everyone, please go and find Kevin on Twitch if you have not already. Kevin, give it one of the biggest, sort of most excited plugs you've ever given in your life. Why should people tune into you on Twitch?
Yeah, I'm a game designer. I've done some things in the industry here. And yeah, I love playing games and talking about game design. So, and I'm a full-time streamer now. So twitch.tv/Kevin Jordan. Come on by, say hello. Doesn't matter what I'm playing. I'm happy to talk about game design, especially when it comes to WoW and anything else I've worked on. So, it's just a fun time. So come on by, say hello.
There you go. Very good. As you heard, everyone, he's seen some things. He's done some things, man. He can talk about some. So jump on there and have a chat with him about the ins and outs of behind the scenes with game design. Now, I've done something special for this one, Kevin. I've gotten a boatload of people here, the proverbial orgy of a call. We've got 5 listeners on the line. I wanted to get a bit of a community feel behind this one so that everyone can pepper you with questions. Thank you for the involvement that you've shown with the community through the show. And we'll start with some introductions real quick. Countdown to Classic regular, Ayle, how are you, man?
Doing great. Very excited to be on.
Great to have you, mate. Batlord, what's cracking, my man?
Oh, what's going on, Josh? What's going on, Kevin? Very happy to be here.
Good to have you, man. Chyngo, how are you? First time caller.
Yeah, first time, long time, Josh. I'm super happy to be here. I just want to thank Kevin for all the hard work and hours he's put in on the podcast, along with you.
Thanks for being here,
my
mate.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Absolutely. And Lorenthar, another first timer. How are you, man?
I'm great, guys. Super excited to be here. This is another first time, long time for me, so I just can't wait to get it.
Excellent. And a return caller who's been on the show relatively recently, talking quests. Sneaky Bard, how are you?
I'm fine, and I just want to second Chyngo there. Thank you, Josh, and thank you, Kevin, for all the hard work. I've enjoyed the calls immensely.
Excellent. Well, look, let's get stuck into it, guys. Kevin, you're amongst friends here. You've got a bunch of fans who want to absolutely blast you with questions. So we'll see how it all goes. I've asked them all to prepare a couple, and we'll see how much time we can get through. But, Ayle, let's kick off with you. I know you're running relatively short on time. You can only stick around for about the next 20 minutes or so. What have you been busting to ask Kevin? And everyone, just to let you know, this is going to be a pretty generic call about the history of the making of the game. We've heard Kevin's thoughts on classes in specifics. Now we're talking, obviously keeping in mind that Kevin's role was class design. So, that's what he mainly knows about. We can sort of speak more on a bit of a global scale, but I've got questions. You guys have got questions. Let's start off. Ayle, what have you got?
Yeah, I'm going to start with, a pretty generic question here. I don't know if you've been asked this before. I'd gone through and looked back at some of the interviews you had done, and it's pretty simply, what is your favorite memory from working on Classic prior to launch?
Gosh, right. Well, right before the launch, one of my favorite memories is that night at Fry's Electronics, where we gathered as developers to basically sign boxes that people were buying there at the store, and go through the line, get signatures on their boxes, and then the servers were going up later that night, and so they could take their box home and jump into the game. But the whole day was just insane because people were tailgating in the parking lot expecting it. The place, it was just packed and massively attended. The lines were, around the building, which was this giant warehouse retailer, and down the street, just so many people were there, and everyone was so excited, and it really gave us a first taste of how much excitement there was about this game and the release of this game, and how passionate people were for it. So definitely one of the best times.
Kevin, I'll jump in and piggyback off that one because I think that's a moment that's depicted, correct me if I'm wrong, in the Looking for Group documentary about obviously the making of the game. I'm pretty sure it's either the LFG one or another video I'm thinking of, but I'm pretty sure it's LFG. And they show this insane old footage of the line going around the block and all these people there and you guys being blown away. So you were actually there. I mean, you've just touched on it. I mean, realistically, to rock up to that scene and see that amount of people, and I was blown away to see that amount of people on the footage. What were you expecting? And also, can you remember any of the funniest things that you heard from fans on that night?
I mean, we got some people that had traveled quite a ways. We had some people from Europe that showed up, from Canada, all over the States, just to be there. And it's so funny because as a gamer, we were excited for the launch too, because we wanted to get in and start working on our characters and play the game. But yeah, the servers had gone up and they were active while we were signing boxes. So a lot of these people had given up their ability to jump in and get that, head start in order to get to chat with us and talk to us and get signatures and just spend the day talking about, and they were wearing Horde and Alliance, shirts. So they were already sort of planting their flag on their faction. And, it was just so amazing to see people already so into it. And this had come from essentially beta hype, because no one had actually played the game yet. So, really nice. And, when you work on a game, especially one as big as, an MMO, there's always just so many problems in front of you. So you tend to get, this tunnel vision on the game's on fire, the world's on fire, everyone's complaining, everyone hates it. And then you go to an event like this and it really kind of opens your eyes to how much people are just having a great time. And you don't really hear from them because, they're just having a great time. So they're off, just doing their thing and not coming to the forums to scream. So it's also just a really rejuvenating time period, to get yourself back into the excitement of working on the game.
Very good. Batlord, I'll turn to you for your question, but I'll just say to everyone, by the way, if Kevin does give an answer that you would like to comment on, please jump in at any point. This is an absolute free-for-all, guys, but I will be directing questions and directing traffic as best I can. So please just, don't feel the need to wait. Batlord, let's start with you, though. What have you got for Kevin?
Hey, Kevin. So my question is, I personally am not trying to get a job in the gaming industry. But I definitely have friends who are interested, and just from a general perspective, because you've done so much work, what do you think it takes for someone jumping in, feet first, into an industry like that, where it really takes, a lot of dedication and passion?
It definitely takes both of those. What does it take to get hired, I guess, is what you're asking? Or is it?
Because I was looking it up a while back, and it seems like it's, a lot of places it's, you either start with not getting paid or things like that. It's not always a direct line,
Right.
I guess to make a more direct question, when you got your start, how did you get your foot in the door?
Yeah. So my situation is pretty unusual. It's pretty unique. It's kind of miraculous when I look back on it. And it's not really something that I can say, you should do it like this. This is how I did it, because of how random it seems, But I started in tech support. I was finishing up a bartending job. And, one of my best friends throughout my life, who's Pat Nagel, many know as Nat Pagel from the game, he was working in tech support. And he's like, why don't you just come here? You know enough about computers and tech to help people through. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I ended up going and working in tech support. And a couple of years later, the team decided to stop working on what they were working on and start working on an MMO. And I had already fallen in love with previous MMO games and was so excited about the fact that Blizzard, a company that I've loved and had loved their games for so long, was now making a game in the genre that I had just fallen in love with. And so just kind of made it my mission to send information up and send ideas up. And eventually a game design position opened up and I got the job. So, and then I was sort of put almost immediately in charge of, I want to say half the game elements. It was a pretty crazy scenario and pretty crazy situation to find myself in.
It sounds like it.
But that's how it went down. And again, it's like, I can't really say, yeah, just go do that. It's easy, because that's just not the way it works.
That's a great story though. That's really cool.
But yeah, just in terms of like dedication, just like show your passion, show your ideas, get them out there in the world, let people digest them, expose yourself to the criticisms and develop your ideas in order to get, an opportunity at a place like that.
Kevin, if I can just throw in an addition to that one, I've always gotten the impression from talking to people like John Stats, talking to former developers through the show, and just what I've read online as well when this comes up about, how do I crack into the game industry, or Blizzard in particular. Yeah. It seems to be the one common denominator is be able to speak nerd. Like it outside of technical proficiency, it seems like a lot of people get won over by just showing passion about something within the zeitgeist, within pop culture, and just going, oh, hey, you like this? I like this. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I can definitely verify that when you're going for a game design job, what level your character is in an MMO that you play is actually not only something you should put on there, but actually increases your chances by putting on there. So you'd never put that I have a level, 90 warlock or whatever on a resume for any other job. But yeah, that's a qualification, when you're applying for a game development position. And it's hilarious, but it's actually very true.
All right.
That's really funny.
Chyngo, let's turn to you, man. What have you got for Kevin?
So over the course of the podcast, we've heard a lot of the community's reactions to the Classic announcement at BlizzCon. I was actually wondering, when the news came to you, how were you feeling about that?
That's a great question. It's something I've addressed on my stream a few times. I didn't actually know about Classic and all of the struggles, that were had in getting it started until after I started streaming. And, I've had mixed emotions because, one, I'm super humbled and super gratified that so many people want this thing that I created back in the day, or helped create back in the day. And it's really nice that, people identify with not just the game, but the philosophies behind it and a lot of the stuff that I laid the groundwork for. And so I'm really happy to see how that's going to play out for both the generations that have already experienced it that want another crack at it, and the newer generations that I think the philosophies still hold. And so it's going to be fascinating for me to see how that all goes down. The downside of it is that I'm pretty sad that this play experience that I helped create is no longer really available on the market. That's why I created it, or helped create it. So it would be nice if it were still available, but because of changes, in the game over time and in the industry over time, I feel like that type of game with the philosophies that it holds to just really isn't available. So that part is kind of sad.
Can I jump in for a question real quick on that?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Kind of based on that, I was actually having a debate with some of my friends, and they were of the stance that they feel that the world has changed in such a way that it might not be as receptive to that style of game anymore to be popular, I guess. Like their argument is that it's going to be niche, where I feel it's going to become very, very popular. Maybe not like, Fortnite crazy or something, but I think it's going to have a lot of success. How successful do you think it's going to be the second time around?
Well, back in the day, I firmly believed in the philosophies, and I still do. Obviously, the climate has changed in the industry, and what types of games are made nowadays, and their goals and their pacing and things like that people talk about, their accessibility, etc. But what you don't see anymore, really, and this is a kind of a core philosophy of not just WoW, but of the MMO genre in general, is that sense of investment and reward. You only get the reward if you invest your time and your skill into a thing. Time has been taken out of a lot of modern day games, where they make everything super seamless, really easy to jump into and play, and all that really matters is your skill. And that's fine. There's definitely room for that, as we've seen in the success of games like Fortnite and whatnot. But I think what's missing is the other side of that, where people want more than just skill, to dictate the reward structure. So I think a new generation will hit it and will be sort of captivated by it for the same reasons that a lot of us were originally. So, but they will be comparing it. Some will be comparing it to the current environment and they will bounce off. They'll be like, well, it's not gratifying me instantly, therefore I can't put the time in. But I don't think everyone is like that, where they need instant gratification. I think, the environment has created a situation where a lot of people feel that everyone is that way. But I think that's just because there's been a lack of the alternative, right? And so classic WoW will be an alternative, and I think a lot of people will gravitate to it.
Could I jump in there with a related question?
Go for it, Sneaky.
So when you talk to a lot of people, at least in this community, you sort of get the feeling that when WoW launched for the first time, it was sort of like a cultural moment. And do you, first of all, agree with this? And do you think that Classic can leverage this sort of to become a different sort of reboot, if you will? Because, WoW isn't the first game that has done Classic servers.
Right. Yes, I do believe it was a cultural moment. I didn't appreciate it at the time, like when it first, hit. But, sort of once we got to the South Park episode, I think that's when, it sort of ticked over. It's like, okay, this is more than just a game. This is something bigger. This is a cultural, like you said, a cultural moment. And that's when it started to hit me, in terms of its the power and effect on people. And that's the thing I believe can happen again. I think there's a whole generation of gamers out there that are young and didn't have the opportunity, 15 years ago to play Classic WoW. And there hasn't really been anything on the market, for 5 or 8 years that's like Classic WoW. And they're going to get a taste of what this thing is. And also just gamers that are coming of age as it releases, like this year, that don't have any expectations on what a game should be. And they're going to fall in love with a thing that they've never experienced and have just fallen into and get to experience for the first time for all the same reasons that we did back in the day. So will it create another cultural moment? That's harder to say, just because there's this whole, sort of feel around the thing. And, the history is obviously going to play really heavily. But I think for a lot of individual gamers, it's going to hit them hard.
Kevin, if I can just jump in at this point, and Lorenthar, I'll get to you after this one, but I feel like if I don't pick up on this, the listeners will kill me. Kevin, you mentioned in passing the moment when the South Park episode dropped, and I was a huge South Park fan, and I know a lot of people were, but I was really, really into that show. The first 12 seasons, I must have seen every episode 10 times or whatnot. But that was a big moment that a lot of WoW fans talk about. And what I'd love to ask you is how that was received in the office. Do you remember coming to work the next day, what the guys were saying? Do you remember the ongoing effect from being put into the forefront on television like that? And basically what everyone at Blizzard thought of and was talking about when that happened?
Like a lot of us love the show as well. Like it was one of those things that we tuned into every week, and watched, and it was amazing. After having seen that particular episode, we were really happy that it was so funny, that it kept up with the high standard that South Park had created up until that point. And it also didn't come across as like cheesy or demeaning in the way that a lot of other A lot of other television shows, when they drag in things like, nerddom or whatever, it's also in that very demeaning sort of way to get cheap laughs. There were some cheap laughs in it, but they still treated it with respect. We were also blown away by how much of the WoW client was actually used to generate the episode. Those were real places that was basically within the game itself in all those shots. And so we were pretty blown away by that, how much work had gone in. Because a lot of that stuff was being worked on in secret, by other departments outside the development team. Well, we were obviously busy with our, making the game. So a lot of us were just blown away at how it came together and really pleased with the quality and just what it represented. And, then that snowball just started rolling downhill and it got out of control really fast. It was really exciting.
Well, it's really interesting to hear you say that, only some people knew about it. And I guess, did you guys only find out at the last minute? Was it on a need to know basis and most people didn't need to know? I presume the South Park guys came to you at Blizzard and said, hey, we want to do this thing, as opposed to the reverse role. But,
right.
Yeah, how long was work going on before the greater, population of the company found out about it?
Well, we definitely knew about it. And we were interested, but for my part, it was like I was so busy, I didn't have time to go, wander the office and look for the people that were involved in it and, get involved. I was just, swamped with, World of Warcraft day to day. So, and I felt like a lot of the dev team was in that same boat. So we just didn't have time to look at it, but we knew it was happening and we were excited about the possibilities. But then, it kind of just happened, it's like, okay, it's going to air this week, and all of us were like, all right, make sure we check it out, and then it happened and it was just like, okay, wow, that was actually excellent, and kind of blew our minds. So pretty cool.
All right. Lorenthar, go for it. What have you got for Kevin?
All right, Kevin. So this is one because I've just grown up surrounded by like Dungeons and Dragons and all these different MMOs have kind of been created in my lifetime. But coming into creating the classes in WoW, was there any particular class that you had, whether you played it before in a tabletop or you had seen in a movie that you were just so excited to work on because of your previous exposure to it?
I was really excited to work on the warrior because I wanted, not because it hadn't been done or because I was imagining a specific archetype or anything like that, but because of the challenge faced with most other games had just made him this sort of, hit point sponge, and they just weren't very fun to play. It was like, you just take damage, be good at taking damage. And so I saw that and I was like, what about every warrior we've ever seen in movies? Do you look at Conan and think, damage sponge, right? And so I loved the challenge behind it, bringing that class up to, what it ended up being, which was an aggressive, exciting, button pressing class, that really took part in the action just like everyone else. So that one I was really excited to work on.
All right, Sneaky, have you got one of your pre-prepared questions ready to go?
Yes, I do. You've talked about the hybrid tax quite a bit, and you've said it sort of didn't work out. But do you think that might also have been because the encounter design didn't allow for hybrids to really shine with their toolkit, where you're essentially going like, there's this mechanic that you need to have some form of a hybrid to deal with?
Absolutely. And that's true for kind of across the board. Like our encounter design, at the beginning of the game was like on an individual creature level was still, I felt, light years ahead of what was being offered by, the other games in the industry in terms of how they reacted, how they're played and how their abilities worked and things like that. They were doing things for the most part, but we hadn't really perfected or advanced the craft very far in terms of like raid encounter design. We did a few things that were really kind of new and different, but we were still borrowing a lot from other successful encounters that, people had experienced on the team in games like EverQuest or Dark Age or whatever it was, but not really branching out from that. And, over time, things got better. Like, is it Nefarian that I'm thinking of with the class mechanics that were baked in?
Yes.
Nefarian. So things like that started to come online over time as we started brainstorming new ideas on how to work in different classes. So yeah, we hadn't fully connected the two the two elements in terms of here's what the classes offer and here's what the raid classes or the raid encounter design offers in terms of playing into those mechanics. So that came much later after we got a little bit less busy with like fixing the initial core problems of every, element of the game.
Can I like branch off of part of that question?
Go for it, man.
Since we're talking about encounters and raid encounters and stuff like that, what were some of your personal favorites that were designed by the team that you got to play?
Yeah, I mentioned Afarian. I loved ones that really called in the classes in different ways. I also loved Chromagus type effects where it's like you didn't know what you were going to get until you actually ran that week's, raid. Just because it created, a situation where you had to be adaptable. You had to be, on your toes in terms of what to expect and how to deal with, the new information. So I really enjoyed those types of things. I didn't personally do a ton of raiding. I was basically charged with, not charged, but I charged myself with playing the solo experience and making sure that was healthy, that the socialization that was going on was, really powerful and really compelling, and that the game played well from a solo person, standpoint. So there were tons of people on the team that were raiding and getting all that information. And so I felt like not enough people were playing, the other side of that coin. So that's what I spent a lot of my time doing. So didn't raid a whole bunch. I did internally with testing, but didn't do a lot of progression raiding as a player while I was working on the game.
All right, Ayle, what do you got?
I'm not sure how much you can speak on this, but I'm wondering how, kind of based off that, how did you guys handle internal testing?
It started out pretty slow. It started out with the team, putting together, makeshift groups to test out raids and things like that. Those were always the most difficult because of the number of people we had to take away from, the day-to-day work to actually test something. But within that group, we had very experienced raiders from all previous games that had been launched. And so that wasn't a problem in terms of, expectation and application. Later on, we had a QA, our QA department actually had a raid team that were very experienced players, and they were essentially interviewed for that part of the job, and they could actually test it, much more effectively and much more efficiently than the team itself. So it went through obviously several phases as we learned, but a lot of it was just playing it and tweaking it. And in some cases, tweaking it to the point where we couldn't actually complete it, but we would send it out knowing that the community would be ultimately better than us at doing things. So,
Kevin, if I can jump in at this point, and I know I'm stretching back into the deepest recesses of your memory, but can you recall just some of the more, funny or jovial moments around the office whilst everything was being put together in terms of people running in and going, fuck this piece of content, it's too hard, what have you done? Or fuck you, Kevin, and your talents, you've ruined this one. Like, any really funny moments about what was actually being made that people started getting a bit disgruntled about?
That we've made, yeah. I mean, there were some big controversial decisions that we made throughout the course of the game that a lot of the team was not on board with, and some of those decisions were made by Alan Adham, and he was one of the founders of the company. So most people were too intimidated to talk to him directly, and kind of go in and say, F this and F you. And, that just wasn't appropriate to say to a founder, right? But I was on board with those decisions. And in a lot of cases, we had come to these decisions together. And I was just a lowly designer. And so I was someone that was approachable and could be yelled at. So I took a lot of the flack for certain decisions. And some of those decisions were like the day-night cycle being 24-hour, the Horde and Alliance split, that was not a thing necessarily until, we talked about it, because a lot of the early discussions were just assuming that it would be like EverQuest and that everyone would be basically on the same faction, be raiding for fun, together. Kumbaya and all that. Just some other big, some other big decisions that made the game feel like a world you were living in and created tension, and it wasn't creating a utopia that a lot of people just were not on board with, and they had to sort of be massaged and talk through the ramifications and, explained how these things were going to make the game better. And it took time. And a lot of people's initial reaction was, let's burn the place to the ground, and go tell Kevin what he's full of, So yeah, there were a lot of funny moments.
All right. Batlord, go for it, man.
Yeah, so my question's kind of about the process before the game came out and then throughout the game as patching came in. How would you guys work with building out the specs and things for classes? Like animators may do, a storyboard and then, animatics and stuff. Like, was there a specific process you guys went through to work on that?
For the talent specs? Yeah. It was
or just like, in class in general, yeah.
I did, I'm proud to say, and it's kind of unbelievable, kind of like can't believe it when I think back, but I basically did all those talents. It is one of those sit in a room kind of thing by myself and work up the ideas. And then after you get to a point where you feel like it's a presentable thing to, other members of the team, you go through them and then you start doing peer reviews and, everyone kind of weighs in on things and you modify from there. But that was essentially the process, was me sitting in my office, coming up with different kinds of mechanics, where to put talents, where, how to tweak them, what effects they would have, and then getting it to a presentable state, and then, iterating from there. And that was actually a pretty common part of the process for every aspect of the game. Was someone would be in charge of creating, and then a team of people would sit around and review it and iterate on it and take it from that, 80 or 90% mark to the 100%. So it was a really important part of the process, and one of the reasons why such a high quality standard was set across the game.
Definitely. It's something for me that really makes playing the different classes. Like, I mostly play priest, but I've tried other things, and the seeing how they flow through and, how they work, especially the talent specs and stuff. It just seems like they must have taken a boatload of work to get them fine tuned like that.
Yeah. And that's why, like, I might have started out, having half the list of features, on my plate. But when it came right down to it, all I had time to work on was classes and talents. That took all of my time to work on because it was so important, because that's what everyone plays the game through. That's the lens by which you, perceive the rest of the game. And also, like, if you screw up there, it's like, this item could be bad, this creature could be bad, this encounter could be bad, this quest could be bad. But if your character class is bad, that's going to flavor everything you do. So it was really important that we dedicated as much time as we did to it.
All right, Chyngo, go for it.
All right, so you mentioned before that you weren't much of a raider or anything like that, that you played a lot of solo content. So, like, just going out in the world, what was one of those zones that you always just loved going into? Like, you just super pleased with how it looked, the enemies in it, and just the whole environment as a thing.
So, when we started the game and we were setting sort of the slice of life of what it was World of Warcraft was going to be, we focused on essentially Elwyn Forest, Westfall, and Darkshire. And we circled around those three zones for, I want to say, like 9 months to a year. I can't remember exactly how long, but it was somewhere in that range, on just those three zones, like building up what the experience was like, what the core experience was like. And so those three zones received probably more polish and iteration than anywhere else in the world. And it has quest chains that last from Northshire until, all the way through the Dead Mines, which was something that we didn't recreate, anywhere else in the world because we just didn't have the time. That's what we wanted to do everywhere, but we realized how long it took and it wasn't going to be feasible to recreate. So the whole Defias storyline was an example of like us just trying to do the thing that we thought was going to be amazing across the entire game. And so I'll always love how amazing and interconnected that whole experience was, going from Northshire up through Westfall and Dead Mines is probably to me is just the greatest slice of WoW life. And Westfall I want to highlight because I'm blown away by how amazing that zone turned out in terms of its look and its playability, despite the fact that it on paper it's defined as this like sleepy farming area. It's just a bunch of farms. Like when you think about like fantasy tropes, that's not the exciting zone you expect to see. That's not the exciting place you want to be adventuring. And you would think that that's just the most boring place in the world. But Westfall is so beautiful and plays so well and is so full of interesting, places and vistas and things like that, that I was just blown away by how they took this really sleepy concept on paper and made it such an amazing place. Because it's easy to kind of take the spooky forest of Darkshire and make it really cool. It's easier to take like a volcanic region, with this giant towering Black Rock Mountain and make it really cool. But to take like a sleepy farm, place and make it super cool takes real talent. And, the guy that worked on it, Matt Sanders, just blew it away. In fact, that's the guy, Captain Sanders, quest, items and things like that in the zone that's named after the guy who worked on that zone.
Oh, very good. Lorenthar, go for it, man.
Kevin, I'm just really curious because in different content tiers, obviously, there are some classes where it was, DPS or HPS that started to pull ahead of others. Warriors were phenomenal. Mages were phenomenal for most tiers of content. When you were releasing the initial content and when you had just finished the class design, did you guys have any idea of what classes were going to pull in front of others or what specs were probably going to get played more or anything like that? Or were you just kind of waiting to see what happened like everyone else?
I had a pretty high degree of confidence. That wasn't actually something I worked on. I worked on it in terms of like setting the standards of what we were trying to achieve. But we had a technical designer that actually did all the numbers work on it. And the guy I worked with was an absolute genius. And I don't know how much you guys love Excel, but this guy knows more about Excel than I basically know about anything, right? And it was mind blowing to see some of the pages he created, interconnected everything. So when I looked at it, I was just like, okay, how can this not be, how can this not inspire confidence? And, obviously we poured over it and we tested it and we fixed all the issues that came up as much as we could. But by the end of it, it's like, not only was this guy a tremendous genius in terms of doing this stuff, but it instilled in me a pretty high level of confidence that it was going to be close, right? Like when you think about 27 specs against a game full of content and, the rubber hitting the road on what could have happened, I think, in the big picture, WoW was pretty close to, everything being viable, like much more so than we've seen in other games that have tried these things and things just being ridiculously broken or unbalanced. Even like compared to like a Diablo where it's like, yeah, if you take this spec versus this spec, you're playing a totally different game in terms of balance, right? And that's fine in a Diablo setting, but in a game like, World of Warcraft where everyone's competing for raid slots, that's not okay. So in terms of like how close we got and how good a job we did, I was pretty impressed. And I went into it feeling pretty confident. And I'd say we hit a pretty good mark when it comes right down to it.
Sneaky Bard, jump in, man.
Hi, so you mentioned that you had ideas for other bigger, larger questions like the Defias one, which I, by the way, really, really enjoyed as well. Do you remember what type of questions those were that you were like floating around?
Not in terms of specifics, but it was just the model of it. Like we wanted players to start the game and like, a couple of the quests would be, go kill some gnolls and get their teeth and bring them back. But then there would always be this one where it's like, what's going on here? Like, is there more to this than meets the eye? And that sort of quest would deliver, the next breadcrumb to the next quest in the next area. And before you knew it, as you were playing through, you were living through this story of interconnected ideas that you were peeling back, the layers of this onion. And it would take 20 levels to sort of get through the story. And I think that's unique to the Defias thing that isn't really replicated anywhere else in the game. But that was the model that we wanted to do. Obviously there's quest chains that take you, 10 levels or, thereabouts. But none that actually lasted that full 20 levels. But that was the model. We wanted to pull you into the game and sort of unveil slowly the deeper mysteries that were going on, so that and people that wanted to enjoy the quest text and all that would really get into that stuff.
Can I do a follow-up here?
Yeah, go for it, man.
Is like the Trog quest chain for the dwarves meant to be sort of similar? Because that like took you to Loch Modan, and then it sort of died off, and then it got resurrected in Uldaman and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's more of what we had time for. It was like, yeah, we obviously created connectivity between quests and stories, but a lot of them were specific to the zone itself and didn't carry too often to other zones, or last for 3 zones in a row and things like that. But so that beginning template was very ambitious, and that's what we wanted. But just didn't have time to pull off because we had to send different designers to different zones and here, make all the quests for this place. And they wouldn't have time to really talk to each other as much and, necessarily bring it all together.
All right. Ayle, I'll throw it to you for one more question, and then I'm going to enter the fray a bit more. But Ayle, I think you've got to go soon, so jump in for your last one, man.
This will be the last one for me, yep. I was wondering, it's pretty documented, like in a lot of discussions about how much you worked on class design. Mm-hmm. As well, I think there's like a few items named after you. Is there anything else that you may have had your hands on that either people don't know as much about, or that you could tell?
At the beginning, we had this giant list, and Eric Dodds and I just split the list down the middle. What are you going to be responsible for? What am I going to be responsible for? He got trade skills, he got main cities and how they were going to be laid out. And on my list were things like the dungeons, how many we were going to have, what they were going to be like, how they were going to play, the individual monsters, what kind of abilities they had, their behaviors. PvP was on my list, how all that was going to work. Social interactions was on my list. I can't even remember some of the other elements. I think guilds was on my list, but I can't remember. So that's where it started out. And basically we just laid the foundations for how all these things were going to work and how they were going to connect to everything else. And, Eric Dodds and I shared an office forever. So we were always just right there to talk to each other about, how all this stuff was going to work. I think economy was on my list. Yeah, I wish I still had that list. I would kill for that list, but it was pretty interesting. But then, as each sort of system got larger and larger in scope and required more and more detail to be fleshed out, that's when we started adding designers, and they would grab and, pick pieces off and start working on them and become the masters of those things. And then I ended up working on, carrying through on classes and talents and whatnot.
What was your day-to-day kind of like there? Like as a designer, would you kind of create the ideas and then take them to developers to implement them, or?
Yeah, that's the basics of it. Is we'd work up ideas. We'd find out, or we'd reference other games, how things have been done in other MMOs like EverQuest, Dark Age, etc. Talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and then early on, you're basically setting the groundwork for the types of things you're going to need from a big picture perspective. Not that you're going to need a fireball that does this specific thing. I needed to do direct damage and then leave a little. You talk about what you're going to need the system to be able to do in terms of all kinds of different effects and spells, so you have a healthy space to work in, and you write that stuff up for the programmers to provide you with the tools you need. And so that's basically what happens at the early stage, is you start fleshing out, the space and the types of things you're going to need, and making sure you don't cut off any avenues you might want to explore by decisions you make early on.
Ayle, I'll get you to say your goodbyes now, man, and tell Kevin how you felt about his appearances on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on and doing this. I discovered your channel through the show, so you can add me to that million list or whatever you guys said. And I'll definitely be popping in on the stream again. I really like hearing your wisdom as it is with design. I'm a developer, so
cool.
I work closely with designers often. So it's interesting to hear a kind of a game god from the past.
Nice. Well, I really appreciate it. Yeah, great talking to you.
Thanks so much, Ayle. We'll see you soon, man.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Kevin, I'll enter the fray at this point, as I said, and I've mentioned earlier on the show that when we were speaking a couple of weeks ago, I'd love for a moment where I could get Kevin unchained. And
right.
I'm going to sort of, again, relatively tongue-in-cheek, but somewhat seriously ask as well, you know, if we were to get you a little bit unfiltered, uncensored, and start talking about things like how you feel about not only the game now, but also MMOs in general now. You know, I recently spoke with Scott Hartzman on the show, who was so integral in the makeup of EverQuest, EverQuest 2 and Rift. Mm-hmm. And he had some amazing thoughts about the direction in which the industry is traveling. And I'd love to sort of throw it out there for an open question for you as well, for someone who's everyone's come to respect your opinion about it. How do you feel about WoW's direction now, and also the direction the genre is heading?
Yeah, so we talked a lot about philosophy, but also like just work environment. I think the work environment has changed from like when I was working at Blizzard back then. We used to joke about things we could do to squeeze money out of people, and that's what they were. They were jokes. It was like, okay, we're gonna make it so you can cast blind, and then there will be a little button next to blind. And if you want to pay, give us your credit card number and, throw us a few bucks, you can refresh your blind cooldown instantly. Like that would be a joke that we'd throw around. Right. And, it's sad to see things like that are no longer jokes in some cases. Like obviously that's an extreme case, but I think, as what happens with anything that's successful, you go from, a person who's, or a group that's passionate about creating an amazing thing to something that's suddenly found itself making a whole lot of money. And that attracts, people that want to make a whole lot of money. And so, money people start coming in and start trying to figure out how to leverage that. And that changes the dynamic, or the, basically the starting point for a lot of the decisions you make, or at least it can. I think over time, Blizzard did a great job of keeping those two things separate, but even they have fallen, in some respects towards that, let's figure out how to make a lot of money off this idea rather than how to make the best possible thing. And a lot of the industry, because it's become successful, like it was back in my day that started to see the first years where video games were making more money than the movie industry. And that's obviously going to cause a huge shift in the types of people that are want to be in the industry, and how it's going to be run, and how it's going to be invested in, and how it's going to pay out. And, I think that's sort of the natural escalation of anything that's successful. But that changes the core idea, or the core, the foundation spirit of what you're creating. And so it's not as pure as it was. And I can say that Blizzard was a great environment there in terms of that, especially early on when we were working on. And there were a lot of games in the industry, a lot of studios in the industry that had already sort of gotten to that point where it wasn't as pure. But Blizzard certainly was. And you're seeing that purity now in smaller scale things like the indie, sector. And you're seeing a lot of wonderful games that are just passion projects that are mind blowing in their design and execution. And the AAA studios continue to make those weird decisions that are money based rather than, pure passion projects. So in general, I think that's where the industry has gone.
Sure.
But just in terms of MMO philosophy, I think it's changed to be let's allow people to do all the things that they were doing much, much faster. And I think that whole idea is contrary to what an MMO is all about. I've talked about investment, and I've talked about living in the world, not just playing a game. And that's one of the key elements that separate an MMO from every other type of game out there. And it's not for everyone, because not everyone can, have a family and have a full-time job and be a high-end raider, that has no life, and spends it in the game, right? It's just not possible. But that's what the genre is all about. And that's what a lot of us have realized. So I don't think it's a kind of thing where you can have your cake and eat it too and keep the MMO genre, serving that same market. So
sure.
That's what I think it's key to what's changed over the time.
Sure, absolutely. I appreciate that. Now, look, it's somewhat of a personal question, and please feel free to tell me to fuck off and you don't want to answer it. But, leading into your answer from that last one, as I said, I spoke with Scott Hartzman recently. He's talking about, another project that he's working on. He wants to dive, he's not done with it, the MMORPG genre. He said he'll work in it forever. He wants to dive back in and get perhaps his next game out there. And the one thing I thought the other day was I haven't really asked you too much about what you've done post Blizzard. And I sort of wanted to ask because every now and again it comes up, please clarify if you don't want to talk about it or if it's not true. There seems to be the word that, Kevin and Blizzard may not have split on the best of terms, and he went out and decided that he was sort of done with the direction they were going in. And then I was wondering, well, I wonder what Kevin has done since then, and also if he's planning on diving heavily back into the industry at any point in time. So sort of what were the circumstances in which you left, if you're prepared to say, and what are your plans for the future?
Yeah, we didn't part ways on the best of terms. And so basically, you can watch a video. I've got a video channel in my YouTube channel that, talks about my time there. And some things happened on my family side. With the birth of my identical twins, that required me to, devote a lot of my time to my family. And the industry is notoriously bad at work-life balance, which is, to answer that previous question a little bit more, what does it take to work in the industry? It's kind of requires that you accept you're going to be working a lot of hours and not have a lot of time for, outside of work activities like family and things like that. And hopefully the industry can, mature and grow to the point where it's no longer the case, but it still is now. And it certainly was back when I was working there. So, I tried to do both, like my identical twins were born and I was taking care of a 2-year-old while my wife was in the hospital. And at the same time, Burning Crusade, I was crunching, right? So, the two things just could not be done, simultaneously. And so, things had to start giving. And I spent time, appropriately because I wouldn't change what I did at all. And, I spent the time with my family. I spent the time where it was needed. And I think for the most part, that was okay. But with most of the team, at the time, like most of them just wanted the best for me and what was going on with my family. But at the end of the day, that work still has to be done. And so, over time, my influence started to wane because I wasn't around as much. The work had to be, sublet out to other people. And, over time that impacted my position at the company. And after a time beyond that, it became untenable. So I don't necessarily blame them for firing me essentially because I couldn't spend as much time there. And the time I was spending there, I was also just kind of checked out in terms of I had a lot of things on my mind that, had to be dealt with outside of work. So I wasn't as present. And that position was really important. The position that I was doing required somebody that was there 100% and more. And so, that's how things ended. And at the same time, I don't blame them for the way things went. I can wish that the industry were just better at managing these kinds of things. And in terms of like the future, I'm pretty committed to things on my family side. And so, offers that I would get from companies to dive back in would require a work-life balance that I found acceptable, right? And most of the industry is, pretty bad at that, at managing that. So I hear a lot more talk about work-life balance, but I still think a lot of it is lip service. A lot of it is, oh yeah, we're going to be great. And then push comes to shove and everyone's crunching, right? So It's a difficult thing to manage. But yeah, as far as me getting back into the future, into the industry in the future, it'd have to be a pretty special offer.
Fair enough. Thanks so much for sharing that, mate. I really do appreciate it. I find it interesting that you mentioned the word offers. Like, out of interest, do those offers come in?
No, I spent a couple years after leaving Obsidian trying to get back into the industry, and I found it difficult. I really did find it difficult. I think also, just to add to that, my specific cases, but I think the industry right now is, generally speaking, in sort of a lull in terms of game design. I think not a lot of risks are being taken with new games. I think a lot of people are just like, well, what's selling right now? Is it a battle royale? Is it a loot shooter? What is it? Let's make that and put a different IP on it. And the belief is that game design isn't really necessary. We already know what the game's design is. We just have to make the levels and make the art and make the code, And so they undervalue pure game design in terms of who's going to answer all the questions that come up within this process. And they underestimate the importance of it, because I think a lot of games come out where they're trying to do just the same thing that someone else is doing, but they've made a lot of mistakes. And that's because they didn't really have quality game designers on their staff. So it's difficult right now as a pure game designer to actually get into the industry. And that will change, because there's always an ebb and flow. New genres will eventually pop up, and there will be a whole new, need for quality game designers. But right now, I feel like it's a lot of the same sort of stuff being made, and people think they don't really need game design, which I think is a miscalculation, and also just sad for the industry in the next couple of years, because it's going to take something special to sort of shake it out of that and create something really new and really powerful.
Okay. Now, Kevin, I've got one last one for me. Guys, everyone on the line, because we're really running out of time and I don't want to press Kevin. If you think of one last question that almost requires a one-word or a one-sentence answer, just short, sharp, bang, boom, we'll just fire one up in your mind now, because I'm going to ask this of Kevin. Kevin, it would be silly of me if I didn't ask now, towards the tail end of everything we've done. Please tell us about your plans for Classic. Are you as excited as us? What are you going to roll? What are you going to do? Tell us everything you want to do.
Yeah, I'm extremely excited. I'm going to start on the Horde side with an Orc Shaman, and we'll have a guild around my channel. And it's going to be sort of a stop and smell the roses type of guild. It's not going to be hardcore progression. There's lots of guilds out there around streamers and not around streamers that are going to be doing that kind of thing. And I want to offer sort of a different experience. So, yeah, we're going to take our time, have fun, and see where it goes. But yeah, come by the channel, get into the Discord if you're interested in that kind of thing. And it should be a blast.
Okay. One by one, guys, fire away your really quick question. Batlord, go.
Instead of a short, quick question, I just wanted to make a short, quick statement. I just wanted to say that when I first picked up the game, I tried a rogue. Then when all my friends played, they needed a healer, and I begrudgingly picked up priest. And I never expected it to be so much fun. I never expected to fall in love with that class so much. So I just want to say thank you so much for all of the hard work you put into that class specifically. It is amazing, my all-time favorite. And, when Classic drops, I'm not rolling anything but that priest. So thank you so much for making such a great class.
Yeah, that's very kind of you. I will just respond to treat it as a question, but I think it was you that asked me what was one of my favorite classes to work on. And I said warrior. Priest was also in that mix. So that was the second one that I thought of, because we were trying to do such a different thing, like putting the shadow elements and the psionics or the mind control, sinister side of him, having him be a cloth caster, And I mentioned in the priest thing how he was supposed to float around like this weird Jedi guy, that class was also just a blast to work on because of how it was breaking the standard cleric, heavy armor, D&D mold. So another one that I loved working on.
All right, Chyngo, really short, sharp question. Go for it, mate.
All right, I'm going to cheat a little bit too and piggyback right off of what Batlord had to say. I've been playing Hunter for 14 years now. I appreciate all of the work that you put into the class, even though a few things that you may have designed could have been washed away. I just wanted you to know that class has held a very firm place in my heart for so long.
Very nice. Yeah, top 3 favorite pets, the team.
Easily Lokna Hawk, Broken Tooth, and the Ravagers from TBC.
Nice. Okay. Very nice.
Very good, very good. Well, let's keep in that vein. Lorenthar, have you got something you want to say to Kevin just before he leaves?
Absolutely. So, Kevin, I picked up this game when I was 6 years old. My dad got it in May of 2005. And I've literally grown up with WoW. And my uncles have played it, my cousins, my best friends. And I just want to say thank you so much for putting so much time into a game that we could all share as a family. All my friends could share and just could make us that much tighter. They're all coming back to play Classic, and I'm so excited. And I just want to say thank you for everything that you did to make this game into something that we could still celebrate and still get excited for 15 years later.
Yeah, it's amazing. I never get tired of hearing stories like that. Thank you so much. It's obviously it's a big part of my life. Something I teach my kids. Just like if you're going to act, if you're going to speak, whatever it is, try to add joy to the world. Like with all of your actions and deeds and words. And WoW was a tremendous opportunity for me to engage that principle and bring joy to a lot of people. So hearing it just makes me so happy, and I appreciate it a lot. Thank you very much.
Sabara, sorry, mate, I brought you in at the last second. If you can talk now, if everything's worked out on your end. I know it's the last moment, but is there anything you'd like to say to Kevin for all his work that he's done on World of Warcraft?
Yes, sorry I popped in late because of some technical issues, but Kevin, I just want to say, honestly, the same that everyone else has been saying. Thank you so much for all the hard work you did on this game, and I can, along the line of the stories of family and stuff, I can say honestly that I would not have the relationship with my sister-in-law that I have if not for me and my brother playing, and him trying to have her not be mad at him for how much he played, so he sucked her right into it, and then we had just a perfect 3-person group forever, and it was great. Thank you.
Awesome. Oh, you're welcome. That sounds awesome. Amazing stuff. Thank you very much.
And Sneaky Bard, round us out, mate.
Yeah, so I need to thank you for the rogue class and the druid class, and WoW is also, like for everyone else, a huge part of my life. I learned 2 foreign languages with it and moved halfway across the world just because of WoW. One tiny question. Can you tell the Classic team to get more Druid class quests into the game? Because they're kind of short on.
That's awesome, yeah. Yeah, some of those quests were not the greatest. So, yeah, if I have a chance to, I'll definitely pass them on. And please tell me one of the languages that you learned was Dragon. Did you learn Draconic while you were...
No, I'm still working on Draconic, but it's getting there.
All right.
Very good. And
Thank
Kevin,
you so much. I appreciate it.
Kevin, I'm going to go last, and I'm going to copy everyone's statements, obviously, about the game. And, it goes without saying to thank you for all the amazing work you did on the game, delivering something that has become a large part of my life. But I'm going to go an extra step and thank you for, obviously, what you've had to do with the show and with the community over the last few months and over since the Classic announcement in general. Just for everyone's, benefit to know, Kevin has been more than, amazing in terms of what he's done for Countdown to Classic. He has been gracious, open, accepting. I have stolen way too much of his time. Even now, I've absolutely taken the piss in terms of keeping him on the line, and I do apologize, but he's such an amazing person to talk to, and the listeners are just saying more, Kevin. And I'm so glad to hear, Kevin, that you're not opposed to coming back at some point in the future. You have been such an amazing person to deal with on a podcast angle, and I just want to say, I'm going to be talking to you to organize getting a gift to you very soon. I personally cannot thank you enough for everything you've done for this show and for me, and you're a legend, and thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, thank you so much. That's really nice. Unfortunately, I missed all after you said, just want to say. I missed most of that. No, I'm joking. I heard it all. But thank you so much. Very kind. And it's been so good. It's been such a great time to do this. And yeah, I hope to do more. I'm on my channel every day, and yeah, that's what I want to bring to it and to the community at large is just, more chat about design, play games, have fun, talk about game design, past, present, future. So yeah, I'm available.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That final plug, everyone, please go and thank Kevin. Go to Kevin Jordan on Twitch. Throw him a follow right now. Throw him a sub. Say hello. He has done more than enough for the community. Please give him a little bit of payback that way and say hello. All right, guys, that's it. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll talk to you later.
Take care.
And that's the show for today, everyone. But be sure to tune in next week as we have even more calls for you. So tune in then for more Countdown. Before we go, let's get through some thank yous, and a big thank you as always to the patrons. AeroPC, Anti, Binger, Brandon K, Callum F, Chunky Dunk, CJ, Connor C, Damien A, Dave K, David F, DJ M, Dufficus, Hurlbert, James S, Jamie S, John HC, Josh W, Michael H, Minoru, Patrick J, Randall H, Rasmus S, Rarebit, Rick S, Ryan K, Schmige, Sylvia K, Tim B, Tim S, Torbjorn C, Voiquora, and Zudamos. And of course, the very, very dedicated patrons of Countdown to Classic, an extra special shout out and thank you from the bottom of my heart to the following people: Alice R, Billy C, Daniel K, Eddie S, Eric S, Firespit Kitten, Flosy B, Freaky Fritz, Ida B, Batlord, Carl W, Nick B, Palfurus, Sarah S, Tsunami, The Anton, Wilson Ma, Vanafak, and Valaco. Thank you so much for your phenomenal support of the show. Countdown to Classic would not be on the air without you and your support. So that's it for today, everyone. Have a great rest of the week, and I'll see you all next time.